उपाध्याय ने किया है और उनके मार्गदर्शन में हम सब लोगों ने मिलकर ये काम किया हुआ है। एजेंडा में आज दो बातें मुख्य रूप से करेंगे। एक तो ओवरव्यू जो प्रोविजंस यूनियन बजट में जिसका कि इस वेबिनार में चर्चा की जानी है, और उसके जो एक्सपेक्टेड आउटकम्स हैं, क्या किस प्रकार का कवरेज है, उसकी बात करेंगे। आज जो इस वेबिनार में चर्चा होनी है बजट पैरा नंबर 48 से 52, इसका मुख्य फोकस रहेंगे। पर जैसे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपने गाइडेंस में बताया, जैसे उसमें रूरल लॉजिस्टिक्स के वेयर हाउसेस की भी बात आई, अर्बन परिवार की भी बात आई, वो एक अलग वेबिनार के हिस्सा है विस्तार से, पर उसके संबंध में भी कोई बात आती है तो उसको चर्चा में सामने रखा जा सकता है, क्योंकि इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज वो भी हैं, उनको हम लोग संबंधित विभागों के साथ भी शेयर करेंगे। सबसे प्रमुख बात यह है कि 2014-15 से अभी तक का जो बजट है, कैपिटल आउटले 4 गुने से ज़्यादा अधिक हो चुका है, और पूरे देश में जो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर हो रहा है वो लगभग 5 गुना है, जैसा माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बताया, क्योंकि उसमें भारत सरकार के बजट के अलावा राज्य सरकारों का बजट और पीपीपी पार्टनरशिप का बजट भी आता है। यदि हम 19-20 से तुलना करें तो मात्र 4 साल के अंदर ये 3 गुने से अधिक हो गया। 19-20 से जिस तेजी से बढ़ा है, आप इस ग्राफ में देख सकते हैं कि जब 3,40,000 करोड़ के करीब बजट होता था भारत सरकार का, वो कैपिटल आउटले बढ़ के 10 लाख करोड़ हो चुका है। इस बार के बजट में 7 गाइडिंग सप्तऋषिज की बात की गई है, जिसमें जो 7 सप्तऋषि मिलके हमारे देश का जो विजन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने समक्ष में रखा है कि 2047 तक हम एक विकसित देश होंगे। उस समय तक हमारा जीडीपी का जो एस्टिमेशन लगाया गया है फाइनेंशियल एक्सपर्ट्स के साथ मिलके, वो ये बना है कि लगभग 10 गुना आज जो हमारा करीब करीब $3.5 ट्रिलियन है, वो करीब करीब 32 से 35 ट्रिलियन डॉलर होने की एस्टिमेशन है। 32 ट्रिलियन डॉलर इकोनॉमी 2047 में होगी। आगे सॉरी आप चेंज। और उसके बाद ये जो 7 सेक्टर्स है जिनमें 7 सप्तऋषि बजट में आउटलाइन किए गए, उसका नंबर 3 इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट आज बजट का फोकस रहेगा, जो इस पर अलग पर्पल कलर से दिखाया गया है। यदि हम लोग बात करें होलिस्टिक और इंटीग्रेटेड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट की, तो इसमें हमारे 3 फाउंडेशन बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक हैं, अनेबलर्स हैं। पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान, ये 13 अक्टूबर 2021 को लॉन्च किया गया। ये 7 इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिनिस्ट्रीज मिलके, और इसके साथ 16 जो यूजर मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं, इकोनॉमिक मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं, वो उसके यूजर ग्रुप हैं, और हम सब विभाग साथ में बैठकर इसको काम करते हैं। स्टेट सपोर्ट बजट पैरा नंबर 47 में सामने लाया गया है। पिछले साल 1 लाख करोड़ रुपए का 50 साल का इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन का प्रावधान किया गया था। इस साल इसको बढ़ा के 1,30,000 किया गया है। और जो पीएम गतिशक्ति मास्टर प्लान है, उससे हमारी लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी को बढ़ावा करने के लिए हम लोगों ने क्रिटिकल गैप्स है, जिसके बारे में मैं आगे भी बात करूंगा। एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात आती है कि प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट को हमें बढ़ावा देना है, तो एक जो उसको फाइनेंसिंग करने के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण चीज़ होती है हार्मोनाइज मास्टर लिस्ट। उसके लिए एक बजट अनाउंसमेंट किया गया कि एक्सपर्ट कमेटी बना के उसको रिव्यू किया जाएगा, और जिस प्रकार से टेक्नोलॉजी के आगे बढ़ने के साथ साथ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की नई परिभाषाएं सामने आ रही हैं, उस हार्मोनाइज लिस्ट को में क्या परिवर्तन करने की जरूरत है, और प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट को आगे अट्रैक्ट करने के लिए किस प्रकार के सुधार की जरूरत है। ये चीज़ें 5 सारी बातें मुख्य रूप से बजट 48 से 52 के पैराग्राफ में आई हुई हैं। इसके बाद लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी को बढ़ावा देने के लिए जो बातें प्रमुख रूप से आई हुई हैं, वो हाईवेज, रेलवेज, पोर्ट शिपिंग और एविएशन की बातें आई हैं, क्योंकि मल्टी मॉडल जो क्रिटिकल गैप्स की बात की गई है उसकी बात हुई है। तो आज हम प्रेजेंटेशन में उसकी बातें मोटे तौर पर रखेंगे। और जो एक बात बजट पैरा नंबर 51 में की गई है, पीएम गतिशक्ति मास्टर प्लान के अंतर्गत सारी मिनिस्ट्रीज ने अपनी यूजर मिनिस्ट्रीज के साथ बैठ के जब चर्चा की, तो स्टील, कोल, फर्टिलाइजर, फूड एंड पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, पेट्रोलियम, नेचुरल गैस, पावर, ये सारे हमारे मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं। पर जो स्टील, कोल, फर्टिलाइजर, फूड एंड पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड पोर्ट्स, इनके जो क्रिटिकल गैप्स है उसको आइडेंटिफाई किया गया। ऐसे जो प्रोजेक्ट्स आइडेंटिफाई किए गए बजट में, उससे संबंधित एक अनाउंसमेंट है कि 100 प्रोजेक्ट्स को 75,000 करोड़ रुपए के माध्यम से उसको एक साथ पूरी स्वीकृति प्रदान की गई। जितने भी ये क्रिटिकल गैप्स आइडेंटिफाई किए गए थे, इसमें दो प्रकार की बातें होंगी। 60,000 करोड़ रुपए बजट के माध्यम से खर्च होंगे और 15,000 करोड़ रुपए पीपीपी के प्रोजेक्ट के माध्यम से उसमें प्राइवेट सोर्सेस की राशि आएगी। सबसे पहले हम लोग बात करते हैं रोड की। रोड में जैसा आप यहाँ देखेंगे, हमारे जो पूरी दुनिया में है दूसरा सबसे बड़ा लार्जेस्ट रोड नेटवर्क ग्लोबली हमारे देश का बन चुका है। हाई स्पीड नेटवर्क हम लोग बढ़ा रहे हैं, लॉजिस्टिक पार्क्स के साथ कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं जिससे लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी बढ़े। जैसा कि पहले ग्राफ में दर्शाया गया है, 2014-15 में 12 किलोमीटर प्रतिदिन कंस्ट्रक्शन स्पीड थी, वो 21-22 में बढ़ के 29 हो गई थी और 23-24 में जिस प्रकार से कार्यक्रम हाथ में लिया गया, ये स्पीड 33 किलोमीटर प्रतिदिन की होने वाली है। इसी प्रकार से जो हाई स्पीड कॉरिडोर के बारे में मैं आप लोगों का ध्यान आकृष्ट करना चाहूँगा, 2014-15 में केवल 93 किलोमीटर ये हाई स्पीड कॉरिडोर थी, जो अब 882 किलोमीटर हो चुकी है और 27-28 तक बढ़ के 10,000 किलोमीटर होने वाली है। हाई स्पीड कॉरिडोर जो MORTH विशेष रूप से बना रही है, वो लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी में बहुत काम आएंगे। ये जैसे आप लोगों ने ध्यान दिया होगा, अभी पिछले महीने की 12 तारीख को ही दिल्ली जयपुर सेक्शन का इसमें इनॉग्रेशन हुआ। इसके अलावा अंबाला कोटपुतली, दिल्ली मेरठ, ईस्टर्न एक्सप्रेस हाईवे, उस प्रकार के प्रोजेक्ट्स ऑलरेडी कमीशन हो चुके हैं। इनके माध्यम से 32 किलोमीटर प्रति आवर की जो एवरेज ट्रैवल स्पीड थी, वो 80 से 100 किलोमीटर हो रही है, क्योंकि इन हाईवेज में एक्सेस कंट्रोल है। इसके साथ 35 मल्टी मॉडल लॉजिस्टिक पार्क्स हैं जिस पे भी काम शुरू हो चुका है। सबसे पहला मल्टी मॉडल लॉजिस्टिक पार्क आसाम में जो बनाया गया है, वो लगभग कंप्लीशन पे है। ये पिछले साल का बजट अनाउंसमेंट थे। और उसके अलावा बाकी अवार्ड की प्रक्रिया काफ़ी आगे बढ़ रही है, इसको भी MORTH शीघ्र पूरा करने चाहिए। आज की चर्चा में इस बात पे होना चाहिए कि इस चीज़ को हम कैसे तेज़ी से पूरा कर सकते हैं जिससे मल्टी मॉडल लॉजिस्टिक्स में हमें आगे लाभ हो। वे साइड एम्यूनिटीज़ की बात है, पर सबसे महत्वपूर्ण उसके नीचे वाली बात आती है कि किस प्रकार से रिसोर्सेस पैदा किए जाए। इसमें टोल ऑपरेट एंड ट्रांसफ़र मोड और इन्वेट्स जो स्ट्रक्चर होती है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रस्ट की, उससे ये पैसे मोबिलाइज करने के बहुत बड़े प्लान्स हमारे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिनिस्ट्रीज़ के हैं। इसके अलावा हाउसिंग आज हमारे चर्चा का प्रमुख विषय नहीं, क्योंकि जो 7 सप्तऋषि हैं वो 12 वेबिनार्स में कन्वर्ट किए गए हैं। हाउसिंग का एक डिटेल चर्चा अलग है। रीट्स की बात भी इन्वेस्टमेंट में आती है जो कि हाउसिंग से संबंधित है, उसकी चर्चा वहाँ होगी। आज हम लोग इसमें जब इन्वेस्टमेंट के पैसे की अट्रैक्शन की बात करेंगे तो TOT और इन्वेट्स की बात पर प्रमुख रूप से ध्यान देंगे। रेलवेज की बात करें तो हमारा जो सेकेंड लार्जेस्ट इलेक्ट्रीफाइड रेलवे नेटवर्क है, इसमें नए ट्रैक्स जो बनाने की गति थी, जो 2014-15 में मात्र 4 किलोमीटर प्रतिदिन बनता था ट्रैक, आज 22-23 में बढ़ के 12 किलोमीटर 3 गुना हो चुका है। और जिस प्रकार का लक्ष्य 2023-24 में रखा गया है वो 16 किलोमीटर होने वाला है। तो निश्चित ही हमारे जो रोड की बात करें, चाहे रेलवेज की बात करें, हमारे जो कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग एजेंसीज हैं उनकी कैपेसिटी बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है, मटेरियल सप्लाई बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है, फाइनेंसिंग बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है। तो बजट के एक अच्छे इंप्लीमेंटेशन में इन सारे बिंदुओं की बात करनी पड़ेगी। इसी प्रकार से ऑटोमेटिक सिग्नलिंग जो है वो 18 किलोमीटर से बढ़ के 33 किलोमीटर प्रति मंथ हो चुकी है और 65 किलोमीटर इस साल का लक्ष्य है। बहुत एम्बिशियस लक्ष्य है। तो इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा कैपेसिटी कॉन्स्टेंट्स आने की मुश्किलें हो सकती हैं, जिसके लिए आज हमें बैठ के चर्चा करनी पड़ेगी कि किस प्रकार से हम लोग तेज काम करें। इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन ऑफ ऑल ब्रॉड गेज लाइंस का लक्ष्य है कि इस साल हम 100% अचीव कर लेंगे। पर इसमें एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात है। अभी कुछ दिन पूर्व, करीब एक सप्ताह पूर्व, जर्मनी के चांसलर आए थे और हाई लेवल जो मीटिंग थी, उस मीटिंग में जर्मनी के चांसलर ने भारत को इस बात की बधाई दी कि पिछले 8 साल में भारत ने जितने रेलवे को इलेक्ट्रीफाई किया है वो पूरे जर्मनी के रेलवे नेटवर्क से ज़्यादा है। ये दर्शाता है कि किस स्पीड से आज भारत में काम हो रहा है। मात्र 8 साल में जर्मनी के रेलवे, टोटल एग्जिस्टिंग रेलवे लाइन के बराबर इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन मात्र 8 साल में किया गया है और करीब 13-14 हज़ार किलोमीटर जो बचा हुआ है वो इस साल में रेलवे पूरा करने का लक्ष्य रखी है। 1276 स्टेशन का रीडेवलपमेंट इस साल काम प्रारंभ कर दिया जाएगा, बहुत बड़ा लक्ष्य है। 100 कार्गो टर्मिनल्स डेवलपमेंट का काम 3 साल में पूरा करना था, वो काम आगे चल रहा है। और 500 वंदे भारत ट्रेन का काम भी चल रहा है, जिसमें इस साल 75 को करने का लक्ष्य है। तो रेलवे के लिए भी काफ़ी एम्बिशियस लक्ष्य है। इनको भी किस प्रकार से समय सीमा में पूरा किया जाए, कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग एजेंसीज की कैपेसिटी, फाइनेंसेस और मटेरियल सप्लाईज, ये सारी चीज़ों पर हमें विचार करना पड़ेगा। एविएशन की बात करें तो हम बहुत अच्छी न्यूज़ है कि हम लोग 3rd लार्जेस्ट एविएशन मार्केट हो चुके हैं और हमारा टारगेट है इसको इसी प्रकार से आगे बढ़ने का। जैसा माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बताया, लगभग दुगना एयरपोर्ट्स हमारे हो चुके हैं और 2025 तक का जो पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान में लक्ष्य है वो 220 तक पहुंचने का, मतलब 2014-15 में जितने एयरपोर्ट्स थे उससे हम 3 गुना पे पहुंच जाएंगे। इस साल में चेन्नई और जबलपुर, मॉडर्नाइजेशन ऑफ चेन्नई एंड अपग्रेडेशन ऑफ जबलपुर एंड कोलकाता एयरपोर्ट्स का मेजर प्रोजेक्ट्स है जो कंप्लीट किए जाने हैं। इसी प्रकार से यदि हम शिपिंग की बात करें तो पोर्ट हैंडलिंग के 81 प्रोजेक्ट्स को फाइनेंशियल ईयर 24-25 तक अवार्ड किया जाना है 42,000 करोड़ की रुपए की लागत से। जो मेजर पोर्ट्स हैं वधावन और ट्यूना के टेकरा, उनको कंप्लीट किए जाने का लक्ष्य रखा गया है। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि जो इनकी कोस्टल शिपिंग फ्रेट है उसमें 77% इजाफा हो चुका है फ्रॉम 2014-15 से 21-22 के बीच में। और उससे भी महत्वपूर्ण यह है कि इनलैंड वाटरवेज जो थे, जिस पर पहली बार इतना ध्यान दिया जा रहा है भारत सरकार द्वारा, उसके चलते जो उसकी फ्रेट हैंडलिंग कैपेसिटी है दुगनी से अधिक हो चुकी है, करीब करीब 2.25 गुने ऑलरेडी हो चुकी है यदि 15-16 से 21-22 की कंपैरिजन किया जाए। जो इस बार के क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर गैप्स की बात हम लोगों ने की, वो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण फायदा पोर्ट को पहुंचाए जाएंगे। करीब 150 प्रोजेक्ट्स उसमें आइडेंटिफाई किए गए थे जिसके कि सभी सैंक्शन करने की प्रक्रिया चल रही है। इसमें जो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण रोल प्ले किया जाता है वो पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान। इसने जो एक साइलोड थिंकिंग थी वो खत्म कर दी। नेटवर्क प्लानिंग ग्रुप में सारे डिपार्टमेंट के जो प्लानिंग हेड्स हैं वो साथ में बैठते हैं। किसी भी डिपार्टमेंट का प्रोजेक्ट वो नेटवर्क प्लानिंग ग्रुप के थ्रू एग्जामिन होता है, जिसके चलते उसके वेरियस जो बेनिफिट्स दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट्स को मिल सकते हैं या ऑप्टिमाइज किया जा सकता है, उस पर चर्चा हो जाती है। जैसे उदाहरण के लिए कि किसी को गैस पाइपलाइन डालनी है और वो अपने लिए नया लैंड एक्विजिशन करने जा रहा है, पता चला कि वहाँ रोड ने ऑलरेडी लैंड एक्विजिशन किया है, तो उसी के किनारे से उन्होंने अपनी पाइपलाइन डाल दी, प्रोजेक्ट ही पूरा एडवांस हो गया और लैंड एक्विजिशन पूरा का पूरा समाप्त हो गया, उसकी आवश्यकता नहीं बची। इकोलॉजिकल इम्पैक्ट्स या प्रोसेस बहुत तेज हो जाता है कि पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान पे जब इसकी प्लानिंग होती है तो ये सामने बात आती है कि फॉरेस्ट क्लियरेंसेस पूरी तरीके से कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स में अवॉइड हो गई या मिनिमाइज हो गई, कहीं माइनिंग पट्टे से जो टकराव था उसकी समाप्ति हो गई, और इसको बाकी पोर्टल के साथ जो इंटीग्रेट किया गया है उससे उनकी क्लियरेंसेस भी एक्सपेडाइट होती है। सबसे बड़ा फायदा इसमें होता है लैंड एक्विजिशन में, जो एनालिटिकल टूल्स की बात हम लोगों ने की। लैंड एक्विजिशन जिसके केवल प्रपोजल बनाने में 6 महीने से ऊपर का समय लग जाता था, किसी बड़े रोड प्रोजेक्ट की बात करें तो वो आज एक्चुअल में जिस राज्य में यदि रेवेन्यू मैप डिजिटाइज होकर अपलोड हो चुका है, जो कि करीब 10-11 स्टेट्स में हो चुका है और बाकी सभी राज्य उसके की तरफ जा रहे हैं, वहाँ लैंड एक्विजिशन का प्रस्ताव मात्र कुछ घंटों में अपने आप तैयार होके निकल के आ जाता है जैसे ही अलाइनमेंट फाइनल होता है। तो इस प्रकार की जो फायदे पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान से मिल रहे हैं, एक जो डिसीजन मेकिंग होती है वो बेटर होती है, ऑप्टिमाइज्ड होती है, क्लियरेंसेस की आवश्यकता रेशनलाइज होकर कम से कम हो जाती है, लैंड एक्विजिशन डीपीआर प्रिपरेशन में बहुत समय बचता है, और इंटीग्रेटेड सिस्टम होने की वजह से परमिशंस भी जल्दी मिलती हैं जिससे इम्प्लीमेंटेशन को भी बहुत फ़ायदा होता है। इन चीज़ों को और कैसे बेहतर किया जा सकता है, इस पर भी विचार किया जा सकता है। ये क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर गैप की बात 2-3 बार आ चुकी है, पर मुख्य रूप से इसकी ये डिटेल्स हैं। इन सभी प्रोजेक्ट में से ऑलरेडी 42 प्रोजेक्ट्स डिपार्टमेंट्स अपने अपने स्तर पर पहले सैंक्शन कर चुके थे। सभी शेष प्रोजेक्ट्स को इस बजट में एक साथ सैंक्शन करने की घोषणा हो चुकी है। इन प्रोजेक्ट्स को भी प्राथमिकता पर अब चालू किया जाना है। इससे हमारी लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी में सबसे बड़ा फायदा आएगा। इसके आगे जैसा माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी अपने मार्गदर्शन में अंडरलाइन किया था कि राज्य सरकारों का बहुत बड़ा रोल है, उसमें जो उनको सहायता दी जाती है, जो 1 लाख करोड़ और 1,30,000 करोड़ का अनाउंसमेंट है, वो राज्यों को 50 साल के इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन की है। ये जो फिगर्स यहाँ पे दिखाई गई है, इसमें यूटीज के पैसे भी शामिल हैं, इसलिए थोड़ा सा उसमें अंतर है। उसमें एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण ये योगदान है। इसकी वजह से राज्य सरकारों को भी एक, जिसको कहना चाहिए, नज मिलता है कि हमें इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की तरफ ध्यान देना है। इसके चलते हुआ ये कि यदि मैं 2021-22 के फिगर्स की बात करूं, तो भारत सरकार का कैपिटल बजट आउटले था 7.5 लाख करोड़, पर देश में जो एस्टिमेशन है कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर का, वो 20 लाख करोड़ से अधिक है। जहां भारत सरकार 7.5 लाख करोड़ लगा रही है, वहीं लगभग 7 लाख करोड़ के आसपास राज्य सरकारों के सारे खर्चे आते हैं, और पीपीपी मोड में भी करीब 6-7 लाख करोड़ के होता है। इस प्रकार से 20 लाख करोड़ के ऊपर चला जाता है। अब जब 7.5 लाख करोड़ 10 लाख करोड़ हुआ है, तो इस वर्ष भी जब ये एस्टिमेशन लगेगा तो उसमें सब्सटेंशियल इंक्रीज हमारे को दिखेगा। ये हार्मोनाइज लिस्ट की जो बात है, इसकी एक्सपर्ट कमेटी बनेगी, और जिस प्रकार से नए चीज़ों को इसमें शामिल करने की आवश्यकता है, जिस प्रकार की सुझाव आते हैं, इस पे हमें विचार करने की आज बहुत आवश्यकता है कि किन किन और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को इसमें शामिल करने की ज़रूरत है, जिससे कि उसकी फाइनेंसिंग ईजी हो सके। ये आज हमारे जो सिस्टम है, अभी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का उद्बोधन हो चुका है। अब इसके बाद हम लोग एक्सपर्ट्स के कमेंट सुनेंगे, उसके बाद एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेंगे, और उसके बाद हमारा जो लिंक है, अभी आप लोगों को 3 अलग अलग लिंक मिले थे, अभी सारे तीनों लिंक शामिल एक ही साथ हैं, उनके तीनों अलग अलग टुकड़े हो जाएंगे। तो तीनों जो थीम्स बने हुए हैं, वो थीम में अपने अपने हम लोग चले जाएंगे। वो सेशन 11:15 बजे से 2 बजे तक सेशन होएगा। उसके बाद से 2 से 3 का जो ब्रेक है, उसमें प्लेनरी सेशन की तैयारी का काम किया जाएगा। उस प्लेनरी सेशन में ये जो आज अभी 2.25 घंटे चर्चा होगी, इसको जो उसके नोडल लोग हैं तीनों थीम सेशंस में, जिसके नाम अभी मैं आपको आगे दिखाऊंगा, वो लोग सारे प्रेजेंटेशन के जो सुझाव हैं उनको नोट करेंगे। उसके बाद जो कोर टीम है वो इस 1 घंटे में प्रेजेंटेशन फाइनल करेगी, और फिर 3 बजे हम लोग प्लेनरी सेशन में सारे ग्रुप से एक साथ फिर वापस मिलेंगे, जिसमें कि माननीय गडकरी जी और माननीय पीयूष गोयल जी मुख्य रूप से हम लोगों को मार्गदर्शन प्रदान करेंगे। पहले तीनों ग्रुप्स का प्रेजेंटेशन 20-20 मिनट का होगा, जिसमें 10 मिनट प्रेजेंटेशन होगा, और 10 मिनट उसके बाद उस प्रेजेंटेशन के संबंध में यदि किसी को कोई क्लैरिफिकेशन, सुझाव, क्वेश्चन होए तो उसकी हो सकती है। ऐसे 20-20 मिनट तीनों ग्रुप के प्रेजेंटेशन की बात होगी, और 4 बजे से 4:30 बजे तक हम दोनों माननीय मंत्रीगण का मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त करेंगे। इस प्रकार से आज के दिन भर के ये कार्यक्रम है। ये अब जो गैप के बाद, अभी मेरे बाद तीनों एक्सपर्ट्स बोलेंगे, अभी उसके बाद ब्रेक होएगा। तीनों एक्सपर्ट्स को सुनने के बाद जो तीनों टॉपिक के बारे में एक ओवरव्यू रखेंगे सामने, जिससे कि जो थीम जो होएगी उसमें हम लोगों को गाइडेंस मिले। और इसमें ये लॉजिस्टिक एफिशिएंसी, पीएम गतिशक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान और इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज, ऐसे ये 3 सब ग्रुप्स बने हुए हैं आप। और इसमें हम लोग ये लिस्ट आउट करेंगे कि हमें क्या क्या करना है और किस प्रकार से एक्शन प्लान हमारा बेटर बनेगा। ये इसका हमारा एक्सपेक्टेड आउटकम है। और इसके साथ अब हम लोग अब अपने एक्सपर्ट्स को गाइडेंस के सुनने की तरफ अग्रसर होते हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद पेशेंटली सुनने के लिए। थैंक यू।
Thank you very much, Secretary DPIT, Mr. Anurag Jain. Now I would request Shri Dhruv Kotak, who's MD, JM Bakshi Group, to give his views on the budget. So now I request Mr. Kotak. Mr. Kotak, kindly unmute yourself. While we, I think we will move to the next speaker, and we will try and find where Mr. Kotak is, or if he's having some technical glitches. I would now request Mr. R. Dinesh, MD TVS Logistics and CII President Designate, to come and express his views.
Thank you. Honorable Ministers, Secretary DPIIT, Secretary Ministry of Road Transport, colleagues, great pleasure to be part of this opening session. As always, the Honorable Prime Minister's speech was very inspiring and has set the tone for what we need to follow. I think most importantly is also mentioned how the internationalization of the supply chain, which is a great opportunity for us, has been covered even in the past in India. I think, in a way, this is the perfect confluence for us of many actions. First is the fact that the supply chain has become a core focus. And right now, I would say opportunity and implementation are coming together with the focus on the infrastructure spend, which has happened with the budget. Equally important is the fact that the logistics efficiency is something which has been focused from at the highest level. And I think we should thank Honorable Prime Minister for already having launched the logistics policy, which links with the Gatishakti program. As far as the government's decision to continue with this capital expenditure-led growth and the fact that it is really focused on these 100 specific projects to make sure the multimodal connectivity happens is a big plus for us. What the Gatishakti program has brought together is not just the planning of the infrastructure, but also the way in which this utilization of this infrastructure can happen. As we have already heard, and I think is important that we make sure that the utilization of this infrastructure is supported by making the best technology connectivity across the multimodal aspects of it. First, obviously, is the unified logistics interface platform, which we have heard about, which I'm sure will be launched soon from a full usage perspective. And we hope that will make the necessary process change come for the ability to utilize this infrastructure better. Second, in two aspects. One is for attracting the investments to the sector and also making sure our planning is right. We need to set the benchmark for the utilization of our infrastructure. And what do I mean by that? I'll give an example of Mumbai airport, where obviously we have planes landing and taking off in 30 seconds, which is comparable with anywhere in the world. And I think that's kind of benchmark, which if we can set right across our other airport infrastructure, and similarly, whether it be from the utilization of the railway sidings or the port clearances, not clearances from the ship, but clearances through the road, I think those are the examples which can make sure that the people who invest in the sector and the people who utilize the sector make money and also be able to reduce the cost. The third aspect of it is, I would call it the necessity to make sure that the 3PL players are brought together when the planning of this infrastructure is done, especially for the first mile and last mile evacuation from the multimodal logistics parks or from any of the other infrastructure which has been created. I just want to leave one example here. Today, we know that we have about 80% utilization of the truck capacity on the road. The current capex spend, if we increase this capacity to about 95%, we are speaking about running more than 20% growth with the same capex. This, I think, will be the big benefit which I see happening from how we can approach this as a business model and make sure we can attract investments, whether it be for the roads or for the other infrastructure which we are focusing on. The last and the most important aspect of it, which I think is a big plus for us, is that the focus on this capex is going to mean that we are further reducing the carbon footprint. And it is not just shifting from road to rail or any other mode, but most importantly, it is the efficiency which we are bringing in through the right use of this infrastructure. So therefore, I believe that India will be in a far better place and maybe even be faster in reaching the climate goals which has been set by our Honorable Prime Minister. Therefore, for me, the way I would look at it is that we have come at the perfect time where India is looked at as a supply chain hub. The infrastructure spend is now happening, and we need to make sure that we can reap the benefits of it by bringing the digital connectivity. And last but not the least, making sure the planning of this is integrated with every private player's requirement by not just for these 100 projects, but also for the large capex spend to be done. So I do believe that we are now reaching the stage where collectively we can build the future of India, and supply chain and logistics will play the crucial role in making this India the most competitive hub, not only for manufacturing, but also for the various services which we can bring to the table. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dinesh, for a very succinct and a clear roadmap that you mentioned, and especially mentioning about the circular economy, the green economy. Now I would request Mr. Vinayak Pai, MD Tata Projects, Tata Projects is leading the country in several projects, not only in India but also abroad. I would now request Mr. Vinayak Pai to give his views.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, everyone, union ministers and all the dignitaries on this call. Really glad to be part of this session. And I'm going to introduce the panel 3, which is infrastructure development and investment opportunities. I'm going to look at probably 3 items. Break what I'm going to say into 3. What are we trying to do through all this? And then what is the core of what we have to discuss in these panels? And lastly, some of the enablers. So if you look at what we are trying to achieve through this is trying to see how we can get together to achieve the goals and dreams of Honorable Prime Minister. It was very inspirational the way he mentioned how to, some of the examples he gave of
Very unfortunately, I think there is some connectivity issue at the end of probably Mr. Vinayak Pai. We will just wait for a minute to see if he can get back the
I'm
connectivity.
back.
Yeah.
I'm back. So may I continue, madam?
Yes, please. All yours. The floor is all yours.
Okay. So I don't know where I cut off, but I would like to say that what we are trying to achieve through this panel, which is the infrastructure development and investment opportunities, is primarily 3 things. One is we are trying to achieve the goals of the Union Cabinet and the Honorable Prime Minister about how we can improve the infrastructure and create, one, a multiplier effect on the economy and the economic growth. 2, how we can ease the living of every Indian and make life easier for everyone. And third, and most importantly, also, how do we overall reduce the logistic cost so that India can become more export competitive? This is what we are trying to do through these initiatives. In addition to that, I would say what is at the core of what we have to discuss in these panels is how do we make this more effective by making projects more predictable. For us, all these projects and investment will be critical when they can become predictable, and predictable in terms of time, predictable in terms of cost. And for that, I think we have to get together in this panel to discuss how we can make better front-end planning of projects so that when the projects are kicked off, the only issue is how do we bring resources, how do we plan and deliver projects, and other issues don't get uh, uh, jumbled in the execution of the project. So how do we plan better? And then when there are changes or dispute, how do we resolve it in time so that the projects can move? So we have to actually look at a public-private partnership model, which is being talked about, and how all the stakeholders can come together and create a win-win. So that's all I would like to say. There are a few enablers which I think are critical. One is to get talent into this into this industry. It is difficult to get talent into this industry. And we have to reflect on how do we train more people, make this industry more exciting for people to come. And that can happen when we digitize part of our value chain and try to drive digitization and technology, which will attract more people and make the projects more predictable. It will also include looking at how we can do more work outside the project sites by modularization, precasting, so that the projects run smoothly and seamlessly. So these are some of my thoughts, and really honored to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pai, and I totally resonate what you said because I'm also on your side in terms of implementation of projects. Front-end planning of projects for faster execution, I think that is the mantra, and we are all seized with various problems. However, now with PM Gatishakti portal being in use, I really see a marked difference where we can remove a lot of our obstacles like utility shifting, avoiding wildlife areas, sanctuaries, etc. So this would really help us a lot. And one of the points that you mentioned, I can't resist from mentioning over here is the talent pool, which is very, very important. And unfortunately, in the civil engineering or hardcore industry, it is very difficult to get people because most of the youth are now moving towards the IT side. But however, I also see there is an opportunity. One, we need to train people, and two, we need to give them better salaries and good pay packets. That would be one of the ways to retain people in this industry. So thank you very much. And now I think the glitch that had occurred, while I had called out, requested Mr. Dhruv Kotak to come, there was some problem. Now it has been removed. So now I'd request Mr. Dhruv Kotak to come in and give his views. Secretary Shipping, I think the unmuting has to be done from your end.
All the three sessions are merged for this one, ma'am. I think if you can tell your NIC person, he will unmute.
What is it happening? करवाइए ठीक. क्या कर क्या रहे हैं भाई वो लोग?
उनको राइट दे दिया गया है.
अपने यहाँ भी देख लो.
Upgradation, modernization, brownfield modernization, greenfield modernization of ports in different places, which is transformational because it creates efficiencies and brings down logistics cost. I think the second pillar is the digitization initiatives, especially taken out by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, whether it's a port community system, whether it's the national logistics platform, Green, which they have launched, which again through digitization means creates single window efficiencies, which have transformed the landscape. I think the third piece, which again goes hand in glove, is a forward-looking piece, which is the Green Ports program, which is being undertaken by Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, which again is transformational in its initiative to have green ecosystem, both hydrogen as well as electrification across all port assets. I think when we combine these three and we look at it with keeping in mind the national monetization pipeline and connectivity projects, which have also been planned by Ministry of Railways and Ministry of Roads, I think we're looking at a very, very transformational environment for the ports, logistics, the EXIM, trade efficiency. So I think we are at the cusp of huge transformation. And this has happened over the last 10 years under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister. And I think we all in our industry, we share the sentiment that I think India and players are now, Indian players are poised for next level of growth. And I think leapfrogging not only in India, but I think to other markets and other places as well, thanks to the platform that has been created for us here in India. So very excited and very grateful for this opportunity, and would like to wish all my participants, all the fellow participants, all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kotak. We're very happy to have you finally in the session after the glitches. And also thanks for putting up the context as far as the efficiency, logistics efficiency is concerned. Now this brings us to the end of the first session or the inaugural session. Since we have run a little over time, we were supposed to have finished this session at 10:55 and we are at 10 past 11. Rather than having a 15 minutes break, may I please request everybody to join the sessions at 11:15 itself. The link remains the same. The link remains the same. Nobody has to move out or rejoin or any other such activity. The respective sessions will start at 11:15. NIC at the back end will take each one of you to your sessions. Now, because this is the end of the inaugural session, I would like to formally thank honorable ministers who have spent so much of time over here listening to all the industry leaders, their viewpoints, and Honorable Minister Road Transport and Highways, Shri Nitin Gadkari ji, Honorable Minister Commerce, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and all other ministers who are present over here. We will now move to the breakout session and meet again in the plenary session. Thank you so very much. pace of construction, and I could not agree more to front preparedness for executing the projects, as Mr. Vinayak Pai mentioned. So these are some of the issues which have been touched upon. Honorable Prime Minister also spoke about the use of PM Gatishakti portal for planning our projects so that there is minimum disturbance during the implementation, shifting of utilities, creating common utility ducts, working in a stop working in silos and work in a concerted fashion to deliver better quality projects. Now, for this session, I would request Mr. Suresh Goel, who's MD of the National Highway InvIT, to moderate the session. He is also a person from the industry like many of you. And over to you, Mr. Goel.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, all, and it's indeed my privilege to be moderating this very important session. As I go through the list of esteemed speakers who have agreed to kindly share their valuable time and insights with us, as well as with each other, I noticed that we have about 400 to 500 man-years of infrastructure experience sitting in this room, who would be sharing their insights, experiences, as well as suggestions over the next, say, 2 hours or so. Given the busy schedules and the high responsibilities that you all share, we are grateful that you're able to spare time on a Saturday to share your thoughts with us. And I do firmly believe that the vision that the Honorable Prime Minister has set out for us, and as proud Indians, it is upon us to now take that opportunity to start implementing some of the visions that has been laid out. All of you are having a lot of experience in implementing various kinds of infrastructure. And we would be in this session covering right from shipping to roads to civil aviation to telecoms, as well as broader topics like harmonizing infrastructure lists, as well as how we can leverage off each other in terms of consolidation and coordination. As Madam said, that we have allocated roughly about 5 to 7 minutes per speaker. As we have already received a lot of inputs from you, and we are really thankful for that, because it allows us to reflect on those points as well as keep the conversation free-flowing as well as interactive. We would have about half an hour at the end to have more open discussion as well as Q&A. So with that, ma'am, with your permission, we would start the session with the topic around multimodal last mile connectivity, which, as you know, in the budget has been given the priority allocation of about 75,000 crores, of which about 15,000 crores is expected to come from private sources. The topic on this, as well as broader remarks, will be made by Captain B.B. Sinha. Captain Sinha, over to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this discussion. Honorable Prime Minister has already set the tone for the discussion, and many of the points which I'll be speaking on are a mere repetition of what the Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned in his opening address. So you can see the vision that the Honorable Prime Minister has for the country. And coming back to this budget of 23-24, it's a vision for Amrit Kal, a blueprint for an empowered and inclusive economy. This has 7 guiding principles, as you all know, Saptarshis, and one of which is on infrastructure and investment. Now, this is the first ever, in the 75 years of our independence, since our independence, that infrastructure is being talked about at such large forums and at the highest level of the government. It is just not about talk, it is also about the allocation, the funds which have been allocated for the various ministries like railways and the roadways are about the highest that has ever been done. And I'm also particularly happy to note that there is a mention of coastal shipping. Now, coastal shipping as a mode of low cost and energy efficient transportation. Today in our country, goods transportation, nearly 70% of the goods transportation is done by roadways, about 20 to 25% is done by the rail, and the balance 6 to 7% is by coastal shipping. Now, if we have to fulfill our commitment of a net zero carbon emission by 2070, this model shift of transportation has to change and it must get back to coastal shipping. Now, coastal shipping, primarily due to our India's geographical location, the way it is from north to south and east to west, it is road transportation will always have an advantage. Even the rail will have a head start over coastal shipping. Because if somebody has to ship a cargo from, say, Mumbai to Calcutta, he has to travel all the way down to Colombo and then upwards to Calcutta. So there is a inbuilt disadvantage which coastal shipping suffers. And therefore, to overcome this, there has to be the coastal shipping has to be incentivized. I do not mean a subsidy, because that's not the word that we in shipping prefer, but some sort of a level playing field needs to be created for coastal shipping to really be viable as a means of transportation in this country. Now, there comes the last mile and the first mile connectivity issues. We have been hearing about this for a very long time, that the cost of logistics is high in India. But what is the main reason? If you all actually do if you break down the cost of the various sectors, and I'll give an example. If a shipper in Delhi has to ship a cargo, say to Colombo, a container to Colombo, the cost of transporting that container from Delhi to Mumbai is higher than the cost of shipping that container from Mumbai to Colombo. Why I chose this particular route is because the distance between Mumbai and Colombo and Delhi and Mumbai is about the same. But you can see the disproportionate cost which is there on the land side. That is what I call the first mile and the last mile connectivity, because before the goods are being shipped, there are issues with the transportation paths. We have created in the past, I can give another example. We have created in the past ports. In the last 75 years, many ports have come up in the country. If you take the example of Haldia, for instance, in 1977, when the port was opened up to public for commercial uses, it was in barren land. There was no road, there was no connectivity, what to speak of. And that is why the Haldia port has never ever been able to perform to its potential. So unless we provide that connectivity, unless it is planned, and unless it is, as Madam was mentioning the other day in one of her opening remarks, that unless we plan this connectivity issues, when the port is being conceived, or when that infrastructure is being conceived, all these aspects, if they are taken together, planned in a very holistic manner, only then we'll be able to reap the benefits of this and overcome this hurdle of connectivity, first and last mile connectivity, and bring down our logistic cost in the long run, which will be good for the country as well as for our trade in general. I hope I've been able to keep within the time frame, and I'll be happy to take any questions if required. Thank you very much.
at the end. Just wanted to clarify this, and over to you, Mr. Goel.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Very valid points. And, some statistic, I'll just repeat what you said, and just kind of shows the potential that coastal shipping has, that we are still carrying only 6 to 7% of our cargo through coastal shipping, whereas we have such a large coastline, which has been naturally endowed upon us. So it's upon us to be able to use the first mile and the last mile connectivity, that opportunity that exists for us to leverage that off. So valid points. We will pick it up as we hear other speakers, and then during the Q&A session, I'm sure we'll have some questions for you to clarify. The next few speakers, and I'll just introduce them as a cohort, are about the PPP frameworks within the important sectors in the infrastructure sector, that is the power and roads. Both the sectors have been there since time immemorial. Both the sectors have played a stellar role in delivering the growth that the country has achieved. At the same time, they continue to have a huge potential for us to be able to still leverage as we aspire to become the developed world economy and meet the vision of a developed world country by 2047. We have invited Mr. Kedar Upadhyay, CFO Renew Power, followed by Mr. Arvind Bansal, founder and CEO of Continuum Energy, who will cover off from the renewable energy side, and followed by Mr. Neeraj Sanghi, CEO of Highway Concessions, which is a platform with emphasis on management of roads, and then followed by Mr. Gurdeep Singh, CMD NTPC. So that cohort will then cover off on the PPP frameworks. To start off with, I request Mr. Kedar Upadhyay, CFO Renew Power, to share his remarks. Mr. Upadhyay, over to you, please.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would start by thanking Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and DPIIT for inviting us and making us a member of this prestigious panel. So thank you for that. And this is a great webinar in collating ideas and thoughts and unleashing really the power that Honorable Prime Minister spoke about. So within the time given to me, I will make only 2-3 crisp points, and I'm happy to sort of take your views and listen to my co-panelists as well. Firstly, the Honorable Finance Minister has done a great job by speaking about multiple enabling initiatives for the renewable power sector, and that is with respect to allotments made in terms of 7 key priorities for renewable energy, viability gap funding for battery storage, priority capital investment towards energy transition, funds allocated towards interstate transmission systems, and obviously the important thing of green hydrogen mission. So this is a great platform for us now to build the next several years trajectory. And coming to the public-private partnership, obviously in the context of what we have enabled through union budget. As we know, PPP is very key. It allows us to unleash the powers of both private sector and public sector. And, both sectors coexist. They help each other. They facilitate each other's complementary skills. And we have several examples in India which have deployed PPP to its fullest advantage. And in that case, what we have done as an organization is also a year back, Renew Power along with IOCL and L&T, we had announced a signing of a binding term sheet for the formation of a joint venture towards developing the nascent green hydrogen sector in India. And the JV's aim is to enable India's transition from a grey hydrogen economy to a greener economy, which will increasingly manufacture hydrogen via electrolysis, powered by the renewable energy. So I think several experiences like this are on, and some of our peers have also done a lot. There is an announcement that we all heard that ONGC signed a MOU with another peer of ours to jointly pursue opportunities in renewables, green hydrogen, green ammonia, and other derivatives of green hydrogen. Then sometime back, a MOU was signed between IOC and other companies, and that was with respect to charging stations, that was with respect to battery swapping, and many other things. And finally, I think one of the largest crude and oil natural gas agency has signed an agreement with some of the global energy giants for joint study of carbon capture, utilization, and storage. GAIL has also done a lot of initiatives with collaboration opportunities in new energy projects. So all this is good, and we can and we will build on whatever has been done in terms of energy storage, in terms of offshore wind, charging infrastructure, energy efficient buildings, and harnessing of ocean energy. So all these things can be done through PPP, and we are quite confident. We are happy to partner with public sector on all of that. I would just mention two things, and then I'll sort of pass on to my next speaker, which are important from a PPP standpoint. Firstly, this is extremely capital intensive. So what matters is obviously the efficiency of funding, and the return on capital needs to be higher than the cost of capital. For companies like us who are listed, there is an expectation from stakeholders that we will deploy capital efficiently and we will generate return which is higher than our cost of capital. Which means what? Which means when we raise funds in India or through routes such as external commercial borrowings or dollar bonds, those need to have a little bit of a credit enhancement mechanism. So whatever we could do in terms of enhancing the credit, building efficiencies for funding through green finance mechanism, that's going to be extremely important, because the accountability on listed companies like us to generate return, to be within the specified debt equity and debt EBITDA ratios, and to ensure continued financial viability. I think there will be expectation for us to sort of raise funds through as economical means as possible. That is number one. And final and most important thing, number two, according to me, is clarity on offtake. So when we market these projects to various lenders, there is a lot of openness from lenders. In fact, all the lenders, the financial institutions and banks are under sort of, I would say, a good, healthy pressure to increase their exposure to renewable sector. And they are quite open. So every high quality project that we open up for lending, we see a lot of interest. However, what they need is a long-term offtake agreement, because a long-term offtake agreement allows them the visibility and clarity about continued revenue generation by this project. And as the project has, let's say, a price guarantee similar to a power purchase agreement, let's say for a 25-year that we sign with Solar Energy Corporation, there is a price guarantee, there is a guarantee on the offtake, and that significantly improves the ability to raise funds. So I think that's going to be very important in all the initiatives that we do, let's say green fuel or green hydrogen or EV charging stations or whatever we do. I think a long-term offtake agreement is going to be fundamental for us to take the document to lenders to market this project and seek funds. So I think both these will be quite important initiatives. And maybe I would add third, and then I would complete my speech. If there is a clarity on how the governance will work, because a private sector company and a public company will come together to form a JV, and the governance in terms of the board membership, in terms of how the executive and the board share the responsibility of execution, how does the review happen of projects. I think that clarity, if there is a way to establish that clarity, I think we are here to see a continued and rapid growth trajectory of the PPP partnership. So I'll pause here and I'll stop here, and happy to get your comments at the end of this session. Thank you. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Upadhyay. In fact, it evokes a certain nostalgia in my mind, and I'm sure there are a lot of speakers and participants here who have grown through the era of whose parents were in public sector, and how they had a much superior quality of life, and the public sector was had a preeminent position. I think with the change that we are seeing in the industry and the participation that we are, the coordination that we are seeing between the public sector and the private sector, I think we hold good opportunity for us to take this forward. You are absolutely correct that it would require adjustment from both public sector as well as the private sector to be able to work efficiently. I'm sure there are some good ideas coming out here out of this that will be picked up by the decision makers as well as other speakers for them to reflect on. And from my personal experience of having handled other regions around Asia, I do agree and echo your thoughts around our requirement to reduce the cost of capital. Particularly in long-dated infrastructure projects, that does play a very critical role, because eventually the cost of that infrastructure gets loaded onto the people of this country. So if we're able to reduce that, then we are passing on that benefit to the users of the infrastructure. So several good points there. We'll pick it up in further conversations as we go. With that, may I request my friend Arvind Bansal, whom I have worked for a long time together as well. Arvind, you have been a pioneer in this sector. Over to you to share your thoughts, please.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this session. Pleasure to see you, Suresh, in person after several years, and thanks for inviting me for this. We have had some interesting remarks this morning from Honorable Prime Minister and Madam Secretary before we started these breakout sessions. The budget 2023 has reinforced its commitment to net zero, and it's highlighted in the fact that MNRE received approximately 37% of the total budgetary allocation to the power sector. Increased allocations to IREDA, the transmission corridor from Ladakh, the VGF funding for 4 gigawatt of green hydrogen, and the envisaged policy on pumped hydro to create 22 gigawatts of pumped hydro capacity are all solid steps. And I think the sector will benefit from the tailwinds of this directionally positive policy framework. In the light of the brief given to me about the PPP sector, PPP framework in the renewable sector, I put together some quick suggestions to help translate the budget announcements into implementation. My suggestions fall primarily in 3 categories. The first one is relating to demand creation to attract investment in the sector. On this front, before I go into the suggestions, I should also acknowledge that in the last 12 to 18 months, the initiatives that I've seen from MNRE and MOP have actually surprised me. They've been beyond my expectations. And the government has done a lot of heavy lifting to enable faster growth of the RE sector. In this light, on the demand creation side, the RPOs, the RPO for storage and the renewable generation obligations have already been announced. I think green hydrogen mandate is waiting to be announced and is needed to be announced quickly so that investments can be planned in this sector. But more importantly, I think penalties for non-compliance and incentives for compliance are needed to be enforced. REC framework, which was supposed to be an attractive investment framework, has largely been dysfunctional, and that needs to be fixed on priority. Likewise, the carbon market mechanism needs to be made operational with a focus on decarbonization locally rather than selling carbon attributes overseas. On the demand side, SECI has done an outstanding job over the last 5 or 7 years in aggregating demand for renewable energy. But I think with the allocation given to SECI over the years and the fees that SECI has been collected, it should now consider making a move to the next stage. There was a discussion about long-term offtake agreements which are needed for this sector. But I think at the same time, we need to also create a vibrant GTAM market or the exchange market. And one of the bottlenecks in implementation of the projects has been that SECI has attempted to time the power purchase agreements and the power sale agreements on a back-to-back basis. I think time has come where SECI can consider breaking this linkage, not making PSAs as a condition to signing the PPAs, utilize the GTAM market to sell electricity in the interim. This would ensure that the GTAM market also expands, and we will move away from the obligation of creating long-term offtake before we implement the projects, and this will help synchronize the investments in generation, implementation of the transmission corridors, as well as the utilization of transmission corridors. The second aspect of my suggestions relate to reducing cost of capital, and as Mr. Vinayak Pai so rightly commented on predictability of project implementation. One of the second risk allocation in the RE sector is related to transmission connectivity. The transmission connectivity has been largely in public sector domain, and I think that risk allocation should rest with the public sector. Transmission connectivity should not be a burden on the private sector, which has no control in ensuring the rollout of the corridor, and that risk should be taken in the tender documents by the public sector. On the second front is the risk allocation on economic viability until volumes come up, particularly in grid storage. It is well known that volumes will drive costs before costs will drive volumes in the second phase. However, we are always faced with the challenge that at current cost structure, there is no long-term demand or very poor long-term commitment that can be obtained for consuming storage at current costs. At the same time, we need to push volumes of deployment of storage. Therefore, one possibility to be examined is an implementation agency should invite grid storage tenders on design, build, operate basis, and then sell the capacity to several discoms, consumers, and generators in short-term, medium-term, and long-term markets. The VGF funding for 4 gigawatt hours, which has been envisaged in the budget, if it is done in the form of VGF for a tender, would limit the participation to very few entities. However, if this DBO-based tender, followed by selling capacity in short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies adopted, it will enable wider, deeper participation of various players and will give the vibrancy needed to ensure large-scale rollout of storage and different business models around storage. The last but not the least is on a predictability front is surrounding land, which is where the public sector has the largest role in the country. A ton of land for RE sector is required to be allocated from public land banks. And there have been issues around that. Therefore, it is important that a public land allocation policy or framework is created ASAP. This would require taking states on board because this is a state subject primarily, but a coordinated action is needed on this front. Likewise, on this, the other challenge that renewable energy projects face in execution is conversion of agricultural land to non-agricultural land. Now, as a company, having been in this sector for more than 10 years, we have seen that not a single NA application is ever rejected. However, the process takes 2 to 6 months with no particular output envisaged from that process. So I think that needs to be relooked at. If it is an unnecessary process complication, we should take that away and reduce the time period for implementation, improve certainty, and also reduce rent-seeking potential in the sector. That is all that I had to say with my limited suggestions on this sector. Thank you very much for giving me time on this platform.
Points there. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Arvind. Some very good points there. I think while we will pick these points up in the summary session and make a representation, but I think the 2 points that caught my eye is clearly we need many more SECIs rather than having one SECI. I think if we have to become successful in this sector and other sectors, so first of all, to how we can replicate the success of SECI in other sectors, and then within the renewable sector, how we can have or move away from a single institution to multiple institutions who have the same credibility, as well as who have the ability to enter into agreements where we don't have to do only back-to-backs, but also on a distributed basis. With your points around energy storage and volume driving cost versus cost driving volumes are also pretty relevant. And we will certainly examine the suggestion that you gave that it should be on a DBFOT basis, and the VGF can play a critical role in the tender. Good points there coming in from the two renewable players. With that, we pivot towards the road sector, which is one of the largest in the infrastructure space. With that, may I invite Mr. Neeraj Sanghi, CEO of Highway Concessions, to share his thoughts. Neeraj?
Yes, thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you, AS sir, for inviting me for this session. I think this year's budget brought a lot of smiles on the faces of the road sector people because of two reasons. One is there is a large allocation made to road sector, and it is a continued large allocation, which means we will have more progress on the road sector. And more importantly, the second one, that the ease of monetization, the para 48, which is talking about private sector getting involved into more and more into, which it is already involved, but more and more involvement. Just to introduce myself, I am part of KKR Group, and we are running 7 road assets in the country and going to be a lot more than that in the near future. And why it is music to our ears is because we are looking to acquire road assets from both BOT and TOT bids, as well as from secondary market. However, the thing is that the secondary market has a bit dried up because in 2012 to 14, which I would say was a aggressive bidding period, and then the HAM took over as a primary source, and perhaps it was right for that date for HAM to build the roads because private sector or investment was not coming. So deferring the investment itself was a very good idea. However, over a period of time, I think things have changed, and but HAM has stayed how it was, and some of the things like 4 to 6 laning projects also have been done in HAM, where I think there is no demand problem. Also, the basic issue of forecasting of demand has been solved because of the FASTag data across the projects. And also lenders are willing to fund HAM projects, and I think they will be willing to fund BOT and TOT projects. So certainly we are suggesting that this time is just right for us to bring more and more BOT toll projects, and as well as TOT, of course, is ongoing, and maybe more projects can be brought under TOT. I would think that HAM should be a means to enhance TOT, if that may be value accreting, because somebody will take the risk of doing the construction, and another player will take the operating part. So I think the HAM can be a means of enhancing TOT, but on its own, I think HAM has run its course, and maybe it can only be a replacement of EPC, where there is no other way to do a project, then it is better than the EPC. So I would think that more BOT toll and more TOTs may be brought out. And I would like to highlight to you that the investor-backed entities, which we are one of them, we are KKR-backed, and investor-backed entities are generally looking for a longer-term concession, large bundle size, and also BOT toll is, as I mentioned, is preferred to BOT, NVT, or HAM. And so we would request you to bring a large bundle size, and if there is a certainty of pool of assets that is known over a period of time, let's say you have announced a few projects, but if it is known that over the next 1 or 2 years, these are the projects that will be announced, we can do early homework, and perhaps we can provide better bids. Also, I would like to say that vis-a-vis TOT, and I would like to talk about 3 things. Vis-a-vis TOT, and also about change in control and InvITs being a strong investment vehicle. Ma'am, about TOT, I would just like to mention one thing. I don't want to get into this controversy, but IECV not being disclosed is maybe a good idea. But since the thesis is that IECV brings the best bids, I would think that if IECV is not being disclosed, then obviously if they bring the best bid, then we should accept those bids, or we should announce IECV, in which case that will act as a reverse reserve price. I leave it to you, but I think that will, because there will be certain amount of diffidence if this IECV issue remains, and therefore I would request you that if you could have a look at it again. Second thing I would like to point out about the easier change in control procedure. I must say that things have improved after you have come, madam. And but there are some projects still which get stuck. I think the recent EC decision. Can I continue? Hello. Can I continue?
I think for time's sake, you may just take a minute to
Sure,
wrap up, please.
Sure, ma'am. So I have more, less than a minute. So easier change in control is another thing which I would put across, and I have. And third is, ma'am, as far as the policy changes for InvIT, there are two things I would put across to you. One is, ma'am, the InvITs cannot directly bid for the BOT projects because they do not generate revenue on day one. And we would request you, especially for 4 to 6 laning projects, if the ministry can request SEBI and we can have it changed, because there is a revenue which is generated in case of 4 to 6 laning project. And also, you are perhaps aware that this current budget announcements treated the return of capital by SPV to InvIT as other income. If that can be done as a capital gains rather than the other income, I think you are aware of the issue. I would like to stop here and participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Neeraj. All very valid points there. So we have made note of your points. Anyway, those points have been raised at multiple other fora as well, and some of these are policy-related matters which will be picked up in further consultation with industry players. We have come a long way from the original days of BOT projects, and then when the interest waned in the BOT, to move to other aspects of road development and then monetization through TOT, and then the InvITs coming on board. I'm sure the cycle would repeat itself and we'll go back to BOT once there is a demand from the industry players, and they should show active participation when the BOT projects are tendered out. With that, we switch gears, and it's my absolute privilege to be inviting Mr. Gurdeep Singh, CMD NTPC, the largest power company in the country, which is also making strides in evolving as a green company now. Mr. Singh, if you could just come in and share your thoughts, please, especially on how you are tapping into the financing for the green investments that the organization is doing. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Thanks, ma'am, for I think insisting that I should join. I have changed this instrument also, so that I hope that I'm quite clear then in the both visual as well as audio side.
Yes, absolutely clear. Absolutely clear. Thank you.
So I think the topic which was given to me is basically the experience, the feedback. But let me take a minute or so just to add few other things which have been discussed and which are very important, which is coming out very clearly that the one of the purpose of this deliberation is that how to reduce the cost of the logistics, and there has been quite a good thrust on creating the infrastructure, which is the primarily the growth for the nation. And Honorable Prime Minister very eloquently just explained then what are the priorities and what we all need to really do. Few things which I just want to just mention, that I think as far as the power sector is concerned, both Mr. Upadhyay and I think Mr. Anil just mentioned, there are many things which have been done, and that is one of the reasons that we had been able to attract the private capital also, in addition to raising from our conventional banking system. And these were, whether it was starting from the VGF itself, or whether it was a transmission waiver, or it's a kind of must run, you name it. And I think there has been all kind of like the SECI tender, and I heard Suresh saying that we need more SECIs maybe in the other sectors, or maybe here also, but we were also part of that. In fact, it started with NTPC that we were taking the payment guarantee, and that's how I think the maximum kind of investors were getting the confidence into this. So I think it all boils down that how we will be able to conceive and structure the project. I think this is where the real beginning happens. So when the solar thing started, I think our company NVVNL had signed the agreements, and then in turn signed with the discoms to take that risk. And all the policies, I think the green hydrogen policy, PLI, etc. I think they are going to be a kind of very enabler then to attract the this both equity as well as kind of debt funding for the projects. But one thing which I would start now is that there is a close coordination with the state governments is essential. I think the first point is that if we have to reduce the cost of capital, there has to be a lot of time which we should spend in planning and making the DPRs and how we will be able to complete the project from the start, from day one, from the development stage to the commissioning stage. I think this is what this is where most of us, I think, we lack. We take the project and then we start facing the problem, and then the dispute starts coming in, and then there is a kind of another arbitration starts, etc., etc., and the project goes on increasing, and it's difficult for the any of the investor whether to come in the equity side or come in the kind of the debt side. I think this is one thing which is a very, very critical side of it. Our experience, what it says is that though we had been able to raise the money quite through the different instruments, I think we were the probably first one to go for even masala bonds way back in 2016. But I think the cost of the funding is probably we had not been able to bring down in the name of the green or in the name of the transition. I think this is one area where we need to really start looking at what it can be. And there is a lot of discussion about the blended financing for the green growth and viable projects, etc. But this is one area which I would request that there should be some kind of more deliberation and some sort of things. NIIF and the NEPFID has been the instruments which has really helped. I hope that the single point of contact or there is a proposal in the budget for creating one position in the Ministry of Economic Affairs will again then will be very helpful. As far as I think the availability of the funds and try to go on utilizing monetization plan, I think that's a very ambitious. I think it can go a long way. Power Grid has done the monetization of the transmission lines. We are in the process of doing that. We are hiving off 20% of our stake in case of our renewable assets. I think this is, and more than anybody else, probably what has been demonstrated by road sector. I think this is one of the greatest, whether it was INVIT or TOT. But we need to really further go on exploring. One model is not going to work. I think who the earlier speaker was saying that whether it's a ham model, probably was very good at that point of time, but we need to really go on looking at that. I think risk reward allocation. I think this is one area which is always for any of the infrastructure project is vital. And in our case, I think there is a lot of inhibition in the not only the developers or in the PPP players, but also some of the vendors, which really comes and we try to jack up the prices because of the uncertainties, whether it is coming from the local issues or whether it is coming from the change in law. I think these things, if we can really go for some kind of standard bidding document, which was tried, I think, and had been very successful in the power sector, will be able to go on. This ROW and ROU, I think this is one thing which is the one more thing which is causing a lot of problem. And this is, I'm just sharing the feedback which I keep getting from some of the kind of financial people from the different segment. So I think this is quite necessary on those sides, that how we can de-risk the project from the day one. Or else, I think then the cost of funding will be going increasing. Coming to the one or two the last points about this, the green finance for infrastructure, I think it's critically dependent on the definition of green. I think this is the another, whether it's going the taxonomy of this green defaults across the countries. And I think, and while there have been some attempts at harmonizing, many countries have their own taxonomies. I think this SGB, this is sovereign green bond issuance, has offered the some sort of sense that what sectors and the projects government considers as the green. I think this will also be able to help. But mainly, I think then it is kind of the one point which came out very clearly is that the dispute resolution, I think this is going to bring down the cost of projects, not only cost of projects, but cost of financing also. I think this is the risk which it is. And I understand that I'm taking a little more time, but I think Renew person just mentioned about having the joint ventures. It's a very good concept. If at all it is going to be with the PSU, I would believe, even as a head of the PSU, I would still believe that it should be on the minority side from the PSU. We should not make it as a kind of subsidiary. I think this is this is another one. And this, I think we have to divide the projects into developmental stage, construction stage, and the operational stage. We have this. The theme has already come in. The developmental stage requires very less money, but I think the risks are much higher. And that should be a kind of done by the government entities and then try to hand over the project. I think this is what we have learned the hard way, but I think this is already there, experience is there. And many a times, even if you start bidding, there are some developers, even in the power sector, I have my own experience of many years that they were ready to take the project in the with the total risk. And after some time, there had been many issues and coming back on that. But I think the developmental risk should be taken by some kind of the SPV, which is the government entity. And then if it is can be done towards the construction. And after construction, it's, I think then this monetization, whether this operational control in the hands of the private sector, probably that will be a kind of very, very good thing. Just to give the one or two news, we have started rail, sea, road, and rail movement for the coal. This is what I think this one of the theme of this budget also. So we are trying to transport our coal from the eastern region even to the western region through the first bringing to the port and then taking through the sea route and then take it to the other western side and then take it to our power station, which is much cheaper than the alternative coals. I think that's why I just wanted to share this. But I think the state's involvement, the close coordination, and dispute resolution, I think these are the 2 or 3 things which is going to go in a long way to reduce the cost of capital. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Gurdeep Singh, and some of the thoughts that you have just raised are very pertinent and also echoing from some of the earlier speakers. The banking industry is fairly robust and also looking at financing the projects in a very healthy way as it has come out. We used to have a large number of projects where the financial closures were not happening. But today in the road sector, financial closures are happening much early. But it's, the preparedness, which is forest clearances, land issues, etc., that are still a bottleneck. And this is where I think everybody in the industry is resonating the same thought. How we can do that quickly using PM Gatishakti portal, ease of doing business, I guess these are some of the very, very important points. Besides, of course, one very good suggestion that has come up, decarbonization and value at source rather than looking at the international markets. I think that's something very good. And MOEF is already making certain changes where they are going to give credit to the implementing agencies in this regard. So thank you very much for joining. Over to you, Mr. Goyal.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Singh. Just on this, madam, I think this whole definition of green is still going up and down around the international markets. And just for the benefit of all, I just happened to read that Vanguard, which is the largest passive fund manager, is actually stepping back from net zero asset managers because there's lack of clarity around green. I mean, and they manage about $8 trillion. So I think as a country, we have the opportunity to take the lead here and define what green is so that we can channelize those savings into the country. With that, then we switch gears. We move to the steel sector. And steel sector plays a very critical role in the economy, but more importantly, we are going to focus on the circular economy, where steel sector has to play a critical role. And I'm pleased to invite Mr. Ashish Bagra, COO, Zero Mahindra MSTC Recycling, to share his thoughts, please.
Before Mr. Bagra comes in, I'd just like to set the context over here. Unfortunately, Secretary Steele, who was supposed to be here in this session, had something come up, so he can't participate. One of the major budget announcements, and which was dealt with in the earlier session, webinar held by Ministry of Power. But because it's an important component here, we brought this in over here as well. So scrapping and business opportunities therein, two things. Number one, carbon emission reduction, and number two, encourage production of the automobile industry. And number three, of course, creating business opportunities for our new asset class investors. So these are the three things. We have mandated all government vehicles more than 15 years old to be off-road. Tax concessions at the time of purchase. Or number two, we are also talking about the capital incentive scheme to the state governments for taking their roads, for taking their older vehicles off the road. So many things have been done, and we are now actively pursuing with the state governments, with the central government agencies, that to set a precedence, we must first clear the house first and remove all such vehicles from the road. But for this, we need active participation from the private industry. So to set up the scrapping facility centers, we also need to have private investors come in to set up the automated testing stations, because otherwise it will all be the same. We would not be getting authentic health certificates or non-polluting certificates of the vehicles. So I just thought I'll just bring this perspective in. Government has announced rupees 3,000 crores on this particular aspect itself. So, it is all moving in the direction of circular economy. It is all moving in the direction of green economy.
With that, may I request Mr. Bagra to share his thoughts, please? Bagraji? You are unmuted now, sir.
You can take the next.
Mr. Bagra, I think we are having some technical issues in having Mr. Bagra's join in. May I request the next speaker, Mr. Dharmendra Mishra, Director CMR Kataria, to share his thoughts? We are just unmuting you, Mr. Mishra.
Good morning to all. In fact, good afternoon. And thank you, madam, for giving this opportunity to CMR Kataria, who I represent here. And on vehicle scrap policy, you have set the context, how it is a part of circular economy and how things have moved in last 2 years. So just to give you a little background, that as madam spoke about how vehicle scrap policy was introduced and purpose of it. So one was, of course, to compensate the need of compensate the demand of recycled steel, where we were having to import steel scrap to produce recycled steel. And then that was next step was to create demand for auto industry by removing older vehicles from the road. And of course, the end objective was to have a cleaner environment. As just to let you know that if we have BS2, Bharat Standard 2 or earlier trucks moving on the road. So 8 trucks equivalent to 1 truck of today. That's the level of emission those older trucks produce on the road, and that's how they are impacting our environment. So that was a big move to come down to BS6 level, vehicles on the road and save the environment. So as you all know, we have around close to 1 crore vehicles on the road, which are due for scrapping, and that's a long way to go for vehicle scrap facilities, which have come up in last 1.5 years. And happy to share with you that our experience has been, we are one of the first in the country, and of course the first in Gujarat, state of Gujarat. And the government has made a very favorable policy for RVSF to join this business. A very smooth policy, a single window system where we can get all our approvals, and that has helped us to set up our business. And now we are left with one very big task where we have to move this our industry from unorganized sector to organized sector, because so far scrapping was handled by all organized players, which we call our scrap dealers or kabadi walas. We have to now get into an organized way of doing it, and all our RVSFs are coming up with the government defined policies. The plants are made all Central Pollution Board, State Pollution Board approved fire safety norms, and all processes are set under the policy, and plants are being made like that. We are gaining confidence of customers who are sellers, I mean the end of life vehicles owners who are selling their vehicles for scrapping to us. They feel that vehicles are going to in safer hands. We are scrapping in environment friendly manner. We keep them away from any possible litigation, future legal hurdles. If they give this vehicle to unorganized players, then they have the risk of getting into any problem in future. So all their interests are safeguarded by under this policy, and if the vehicles are scrapped by registered vehicle scrap facilities. So that's the advantage to end of life vehicle owners. And as Madam said that we are starting, the government is taking the lead by surrendering their 15-year-old vehicles for scrapping. That's a good move. That will infuse a lot of confidence and favorable feelings in private owners. And we already see there are customers, there are users who are giving their vehicles for scrapping on their own. Though the policy is currently in voluntary mode, we are not enforcing it. This will, for private users, it will come into enforcement from 1st June 2024. Till then, people are taking their own calls and coming forward for scrapping. Under the policy, there are a couple of advantages, incentives for giving vehicle for scrapping. We issue a certificate of deposit, which is a very, very effective, tool to attract people for giving their vehicles for scrapping. This certificate of deposit is valid for 2 years. Someone who uses this certificate to buy a new vehicle, he gets 25% reduction in road tax in case of passenger vehicle and 15% reduction in road tax of commercial vehicle. And it is tradable also. So if someone has got 2 or 3 cars and he wants to get rid of one of the older cars and he doesn't want to replace it, he can sell the certificate of deposit to someone who needs it and avail the benefit. So this is a very, very powerful step, very impactful step which the government has taken. And now customers are getting aware of it and wanting to take advantage of it. Now we are left with 2 or 3 challenges. One, in a very systematic way where state governments have to enforce this and move this unorganized way of scrapping to organized way of scrapping. That is very important. Otherwise, there are 2 different, very, very diverse people are competing with each other, and that will defeat the purpose. And I'm sure concerned authorities are very cognizant of this challenge, and steps are being taken to remove this unnecessary competition between unorganized and organized players. Second is to build a lot of awareness at the grassroots level. It is like revolution we have to create in the society, and with incentive, with the awareness drive campaign for for owners to surrender their vehicles at the right time. That is something which we have to do, and discussions have been happening in several forums, and there has been promises that yes, it will be done. So with our experience, I can share that whatever digital reach we have done in our peripheral market or our span of control, we have seen people make a notice of it, come forward and give their offer their vehicle for scrapping. So advantages, as I said, if I can sum up, cleaner environment, new demand for automobile industry, which is a very important and large part of our GDP, and of course demand to meet recycled steel. We don't have to be dependent on imported scrap, which I really don't understand why it should be done if we have in our own country so much of metal to be scrapped or recycled. So
Mr. Mishra, I'm sorry, we have to stop you.
Yeah, so madam, I've almost concluded it. So with this, I conclude my session, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. We did see Mr. Bhagra who has joined. I'll try again if he can share his thought with us. Mr. Bhagra.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Sorry, at the moment, I've been there since morning, but the moment my turn came, it threw me out. I don't know why. So, but I'm back. So, yes, I can begin. So, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak with you all and to bring about the points of this new vehicle recycling policy, which has been introduced by the present government. And I think it was the much needed affair, and MOP has been doing a wonderful job in getting this new system in place. Mr. Dharmendra Mishra has already stated the good points of this policy. I would directly come to save some time on the challenges, which needs to be taken care to get this policy implemented. The first most is that the states needs to get on board. Today we have only about 12 or 14 states which are on board with this policy. Rest of the states are yet to join and declare their own RVSF policies. NSWS, which has been created, which is the National Single Window Clearance System, is more of a additional requirement which has been added into the compliances. So this needs to automatically work as single window clearance. So we need to work on that. Which is the most welcome step of government vehicles being mandated for compulsory scrapping. It has also to be seen with this, that this goes to the RVSF, to the registered vehicle scrapping facilities, which are compliant from environment-friendly manner in all the way. So that is a step which needs to be taken, that the strict compliances needs to happen so that nobody hurts the environment. Awareness, as has been told earlier, is a very big issue. It's not only with the citizens of the country as to what to do with their vehicles, it is also with the respective RTOs and their team down the line, because they are themselves not aware what this RVSF policy is all about. So the awareness programs for them also needs to be done. Another thing is there are a lot of benefits which the government has declared for the people in incentives if they scrap their old vehicle. My suggestion is, rather than states and OEMs forwarding it to them, they should be given the benefits directly in their accounts, rather than depending upon the OEMs to declare some kind of a scheme. It should go into their accounts directly. Since this is a new business, most of the RVSFs are, have to be compliant in a lot of manners, whether on the pollution control side and also on the hazardous material handling side. So there has to be a very strict compliance for both incentives and disincentives incentives for the companies' penalties which are not following their compliances. So with this, I would like to rest my case, and thank you very much. These are the few challenges which we need to work on. We know it is a very nascent industry. It will take a lot of time, number of years to build up, but I am sure we'll be able to get around that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhagra. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts in a very, very crisp manner. And something that resonated with me for sure was that we certainly need more awareness. I was personally not much aware about what are the benefits coming out of this policy, and I can see a few heads nodding in this room. So maybe we need to take inspiration from what the mutual fund industry did to propagate the use of mutual funds and thereby making our democratizing our savings into the mutual fund industry. So maybe the industry body as well as the government, we can work together to make this whole initiative more aware and bring it closer to our people. Great thoughts there. We'll be switching gears again, and now we are bringing in Mr.
If I may interrupt for a minute, sir, please. I am from the Ministry of Steel. Ruchika Govil, Additional Secretary Steel. Ma'am had mentioned the fact that Secretary Steel is not available. He did ask me to put in a few important words. So if you have time, if I could intervene for a couple of minutes, please.
Yeah, of course. We got a message. We were trying to reach out to you, and I got a message that you're not speaking. So anyway, good to have you, Ruchika.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, as you're aware, and as most of the August House is aware, that Ministry of Steel had worked in this direction, and we had our National Steel Scrap Policy out in 2019. It was an effort towards procuring and working towards a streamlined system of getting steel scrap for the steel industry. And ma'am, we did work very closely with MORTH, and with your policy of 2021, I think that assured supply of steel scrap from the end of life vehicles is a very important move in this direction of getting scrap steel. I would like to say that with the steel scrap being available, the whole purpose of decarbonization is being met on two counts. Firstly, polluting vehicles, which are more than 15 years old, will be off the roads. And secondly, that all the steel that is made from steel scrap actually has the lowest possible emissions when we are making steel. So both the purposes of decarbonization will be met. Ma'am, working in conjunction with your policy, we feel that the RVSF industry will get a huge boost. We already see that 18 states have adopted the whole policies that have been enunciated to encourage people to actually weed out their old vehicles. Ma'am, also we see that states are giving now RVSFs and industry status, and UP alone has 11 RVSFs. Our own Mr. Bhagra, with our PSU, MSTC, we have already 6 centers, and it will soon be 12 centers for RVSFs. But the kind of flow of cars that we are expecting in the short run itself, more than 9 lakhs cars, I think this is where, when we talk about setting up of a new industry, RVSFs are definitely the new industry, while the vehicles from the vehicle industry would provide the supply of the cars. We in the steel industry are willing to be active partners in terms of demand, and that is a very important demand, because when we talk about green steel, this will be a very important raw material for producing green steel. Yes, persons in the House have already talked about decarbonization and defining the taxonomy of green steel. Whatever the taxonomy might be in terms of green or green steel, definitely scrap is going to form a very important roadmap. We had the earlier speaker talking about imports and why do we need to import? I think every economy today is becoming protectionist about their scrap, because everybody is aware that scrap is not a waste material now. It is pretty much a resource. It is a wealth. By making steel from the scrap, there is going to be so much less carbon emissions. With this awareness, we see at least EU and the US producing. US, in fact, produces 70 to 80% of its steel from scrap. India is today producing only 22% of its steel from scrap. But as the very old end-of-life vehicles come into the role and into the RVSFs, we will see that this percentage of steel produced from scrap will only increase. Also, ma'am, we have to point out that the steel industry is in a very robust space. From its present capacity of 154 million tons, it is set to increase to 300 million tons by 2030. And if the availability of scrap increases as per the opportunities provided by the old vehicles coming up, a robust RVSF industry coming up, the state government supporting the RVSFs, giving them industry status, and if the OEMs also were to extend benefits in this regard for selling new vehicles, I think it's a no-brainer that this is an industry completely set to be launched. Thank you. Those are my short comments.
I think glad to hear that the sentiments shared by the speakers from the industry as well as by you, there is a lot of commonality between the two. And I'm quite sure that the statistics that you have shared of 22% steel from scrap in the country, with the US being at 70 to 80%, we are on the right path to be hitting those numbers very soon. So with that, I thank you for your participation and comments, and then pivot the discussion toward in another direction, which is coming in from the capital providers, because they represent the capital which ultimately comes into infrastructure as an attractive asset class. Ultimately, what we are here for is to be able to find a balance between the opportunities that are being presented from the development side, operational side, as well as from the financing side. And with that, may I request Mr. Pushkar Kulkarni, who is the co-head of infrastructure at CPP, which is one of the largest pension funds in the world, and one of the significant players of infrastructure for the past decade or so, to share his thoughts. Pushkar?
Thank you, Suresh, and Madam Secretary, for giving CPP Investments this opportunity to present our views, as well as all other dignitaries from MORTH and NHAI. At the onset, we would like to congratulate the central government and the finance ministry in specific for presenting another growth-oriented budget, which should give us to the already burgeoning infrastructure sector. As a quick introduction, we at CPP Investments represents Canada's largest pension fund. We are about 536 billion Canadian dollars, out of which about 22 billion Canadian dollars or 1.3 lakh crore has been invested in the Indian market across various sectors, including infrastructure, sustainable energies, real estate, private equities, public equities, and so on. Closer to this session, we have been partnering the government in their efforts on national monetization pipeline. We have tried to provide our insights, which have been kindly taken by this government, especially with relating to creating the InvIT at Power Grid and at NHAI. We continue to support these endeavors, and we would like to maintain our long-term partnership with these initiatives. With this background, I would like to make 4 pointed suggestions basis some of the budgetary announcements that came in. And at the first instance, I would like to start with the topic of predictable regulatory frameworks. As you've seen, ma'am, today, the InvIT structure has found a great amount of acceptance within the infrastructure community. And several government departments are looking towards creating InvITs. Now, when we are putting in significant capital and significant importance to these structures, I think the long-term predictability of its regulations and stability of its regulations is a very, very important topic. To that end, we have seen certain announcements in this budget which could adversely impact the already made investments in such structures. And we have made our representations, and we kindly request you to also help in actually clarifying those so that the path for continued investments through InvIT structures becomes smoother. Secondly, there is a level of uncertainty that has developed around stamp duty and GST implications on certain concessions, and so on. And again, removing uncertainty around this with coordination between the infrastructure-led ministries and the finance ministry would greatly help the investor community as such. Secondly, we would like to bring your attention to the importance of timely regulatory approvals as well as the redressal of disputes. Now, it's very common across the globe that concessions, certain disagreements, disputes arise between the concessioning authority and the concessionaires. But solving it in a timely manner and putting it to rest quickly and having policies that clarify certain industry-led issues is very, very important. And we are very supportive that the National Highway Authority has created the CCI mechanism, which has expedited this in a big way. But still, room for doing this in a faster manner, in a more predictable manner. And to that end, we request your good self and the ministry to continue to make progress in this direction. The third aspect is again around predictability and visibility. And here we come to what specifically NHAI is looking to monetize through the National Highway Authority as well as the TOT platforms. I think a clear visibility of sort of a path to what is likely to be monetized in InvIT, what is likely to be monetized through the TOT route over sort of a couple of years period, months in advance, would actually help investors also sort of plan their war chest, plan their investments, and also help make better participation through these routes of monetization. So with that, we would request also on the NHAI InvIT side to look at one versus having 2 or 3, because every monetization cycle takes significant efforts, significant time on part of all stakeholders, including NHAI, including the MORTH and the investor community, and last but not the least, the NHAI InvIT management team. So I think we might have better outcomes and more predictable outcomes if we look at one big bang thing, let's say to be done in the months of November, December, so that it gives enough time to ensure it never spills over to the next financial year. Lastly, I think the success of the NHAI InvIT structure, its transparent price discovery mechanism, and its robust framework has appetite to be taken to other subsectors of infrastructure where other parts of the national monetization pipeline are yet to sort of find feet in how to monetize their assets through the InvIT route or through the price discovery route. So we encourage the government to actually, sort of expend that knowledge to some of the other ministries, and we of course would be happy to be of any assistance. Lastly, ma'am, we want to talk about state level assets. The Prime Minister made a very pertinent point that the states have a significant role to play in the dream of creating the level of infrastructure that the Prime Minister has laid out for us. To that end, several states have taken small initiatives in trying to monetize their assets, taking cue from the central government. However, some of the state level assets and the frameworks that they present may not match the risk profile of long-term patient investors, international investors. However, it could very well be done using some of the already created frameworks by the federal government and create a partnership between the federal and the state governments to help them monetize their assets. I think this could be an initiative that will help the states greatly while giving speed to their monetization requirements. So with this, I would like to end my thoughts. And if there are any questions, happy to take now or later.
Pushkar, for very crisp and very focused suggestions. I think all well taken. I think the last one is very, very interesting because the states have a huge potential, as Honorable Prime Minister also stated, and they are equal partners in new capital creation. And that can only happen if they also have a very robust monetization program. And maybe we can see the example that NTPC said when they set up SECI, that ultimately the states have the demand for the renewable power, but it's kind of routed through the structure in which there is the might of NTPC and the credibility for NTPC standing behind, which then crowds in private investment to come through. So something that perhaps we pick your brains on to create a paper, but certainly we have made a note of it and we will discuss this further. We are running behind time, so maybe I'll request Mr. Pawan Parekh, CEO of Safeway Concessions, who was also the concessionaire of the first TOT1 bundle, to share his thoughts. Pawan, we are running behind schedule, so request if you can just be very crisp in your usual style, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suresh. Mr. Padhyay, Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Yadav, and all other guests in this forum. Very good afternoon to you. So the importance of infrastructure, especially the highway sector, being the building block for the country is well established. Everybody understands, everybody appreciates. And also the fact that this is one of the 7 Saptarishis, which is also the focus area of the government, is extremely heartening. So I'll come and talk about the budget announcements, and I have some suggestions to make here. So the budget is extremely positive because 2.7 lakh crores of investment, which is an increased allocation, is a very, very clear step in the right direction. And this will help us achieve the vision of having a world-class infrastructure for our country. As a concessionaire and people who are operating assets, we are completely aligned with this vision and are committed in supporting the ministry and the government in building a modern transportation sector for our country. The budget has also shown a very strong commitment to national monetization pipeline. And for your information, it is also very heartening to state that roads is the highest contributor to about 27%, which is approximately 1.6 lakh crores in this NMP. Being the first TOT, which also opened new avenues for monetization of assets, which attracted large bids from large institutional players, the investors were having these experiences, which I'll list out. First of all, it was very positive, with authorities showing flexibility, understanding, and addressing bidders' queries to a reasonable satisfaction. Most important, the process was transparent and credible, which also made sure that investors also saw acceptance from the lending community to a very large extent. So my suggestions to further accelerate this ambitious but achievable plan is to categorize these suggestions into 3 baskets. The first one being, how do we attract capital, long-term capital? The second one is how to manage the assets better. And third one is how do we improve trading of assets, because that makes these assets more attractive. So let us look at these in brief. Number 1, attracting capital. The first need is to design bundle sizes which are large. That means from a minimum size of 150 million to about 600 million, because these are long concession periods of more than 25 years. This will also achieve economies of scale and attract long-term capital in the road sector. Implementing the monetization plan at this scale will also have challenges because this is a 20-25 years long concession. There will be need to adapt to changing operational needs, new technologies, and therefore, which has also been highlighted by other speakers here, contract change administration, which is also called change in scope, either because of new requirements or change in law, should be very swift, because this will create credibility to the whole operation. This will also eliminate financial strain, worries in the banking community, and unnecessary delays. And I would request avoid declaration of competing roads just before announcing a large bid, because this makes the whole exercise uncertain. Coming to the better asset management part, I encourage the government to introduce newer technologies so that we are always ahead of the technology curve in order to improve the overall user experience. And I will not hesitate in saying that a lot of our initiatives of the investor community is to improve the road setup in terms of safety. So there is a need to allow duty-free import of high-end road safety equipment in our country. And this is presently not manufactured in India. And this will transform the road safety system, on our roads. And the third one being improving trading of assets. The change in our control should be expeditious, swift. This will ensure that three things will happen. Number one, this will generate confidence in investors, that if they want to exit and want to invest again, they are welcome. The second one being, it will also make the sector more vibrant with activities and a large participation. And the investment itself will become more attractive. So I'm very happy that a lot of steps have been taken by the government in consulting the industry. And I'm sure that this will bring up speed of execution, transparency, and achieve the overall objective of inclusive development and unleashing the potential of India, which we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pawan. Glad to see that there's a resonance of thoughts between what Pushkar said and what you are sharing here. But there are some new thoughts that you have put forth which are quite valuable, certainly related to easier change of control so that the trading of assets can take place, given that we already have quite a few players in the market now. We'll certainly consider those, as well as your suggestions on improving road safety by making those equipment duty-free. Although I would think that, given that we are emphasizing on Atmanirbhar Bharat at this point in time, so maybe you can let us know what equipment are these, so that we can consider how they can be manufactured in the country, while we consider how they can be imported in the interim period.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Then it's my absolute privilege to be inviting Mr. Govindan from L&T to be sharing his thoughts. Now, Mr. Govindan, those who don't know, actually has worn many hats. And given that he is currently the Chief Risk Officer of L&T, he has a wide exposure to the various aspects of infrastructure, right from construction to financing. He used to manage the treasury before that. And something that I personally like, that he is a great believer in the InvIT as a concept. So, Mr. Govindan, with pleasure, I invite you to share your thoughts, please.
Thanks a lot for inviting me for this conference, and honored to be a part of the interactions today. I think I just want to I want to bring one of the points which I didn't put in the presentation, which is very critical for the country and for infrastructure. See, Indian retail system and the Indian retail system has done a spectacular job. If you look at I think many of us may know, and some of us may not know, the futures and options trading activity in Nifty futures and Bank Nifty futures and options trades around 85 to 90 lakh crores a day. Is 1/3 of GDP is traded every day, and it is very robust, primarily because of very large retail participation. Now, and just for information, this is the largest in the world. I mean, even US equity market doesn't have this sort of size of robustness. Now, how do you get the retail participation? How do you get the retail to come into the market? Because one is you can do through mutual funds, but it will be great to have interest rate futures and even a corporate bond index of PSU entities, create an index out of it, trade two indices. One is the futures on Nifty. It's very futures on interest rates. Very simple, because inflation is the only determinant of this. We have had a tremendous success in the equity market. There is a SEBI paper, which is a SEBI committee which is working on this. We need to really ensure if you have 20-25 lakh crores of trading activity in interest rate futures, the entire government security market, corporate bond market, and access of bond markets for infrastructure will be benefited a lot. we need to take a special interest in doing this. This is one of my suggestions. Really believe this can change a lot of paradigms of the financial system in the country. The second point, which I want to start with, is on the PPP and equity participation. Since I'm more concentration on financing related issues, why can't we have the index-based inflation linked, which is very successful in roads? It should go to all the sectors, including metros, rails, everywhere. All the sectors in which we are planning to do PPP type. We should have a transparent mechanism. It is spectacularly worked in the case of roads. Why can't it be transferred to all the sectors? So the future inflation is linked to the revenues linked to the inflation. This will really remove a lot of uncertainties on the post-construction phase. The second area on the risk mitigation is that, is it really possible for us to look at two options of bidding itself? One is the least present value of revenues for all the concessions, right? Very successful in UK and many other countries. And the concession period will be flexible till the bidder achieves this least project value which is bid for. So the concession period can be increased or decreased, and he is going to bid on the basis of least present value of revenues. And to ensure the project costs are not going out of control, the Gatishakti based the preconditions existing for the utility approvals and change of scope, all of that, if you can have a defined compensation mechanism, right? At the time of bidding itself, at the time of tender itself, for every 3-month delay, it may not be for 1 month. We can maybe start with 3-month delay. This will be the additional compensation which will come either for the EPC company or for the project company which is building the concession project, right? So if you have transparency, the disputes will not be there subsequently. Most of this tutu meme stuff will completely disappear. And the other significant reform which is required is on the how do you get almost 100 lakh crores of money is available in the pension fund industry, provident fund industry. It's very large. Their participation is relatively muted today, even in InvITs. Now, why can't we have it? Today, it is they are allowed to invest up to 5%, right? Equity, many of this regulatory framework is 15% they can be done. Why can't InvIT, they can participate up to 15%? They are interested in long-term assets. All the assets which will come under the PPP are long-term assets. In like some of the metros and all that can go for 60, 70 years. It will be a great product for them. Long-term assets, both on 15% number from 5, both on the incremental basis and also on the stock of money which they are left. This will attract almost 25 lakh crores worth of money into the InvIT framework and also the support the concessions-based PPP bidding in almost all the sectors. Roads has been very successful. We can recreate this everywhere and almost all the sectors. And the timely resolution, the thinking is, okay, you have arbitration today. Some PSUs are looking at maximum arbitration is they're trying to limit to 25 crores. Above that, it goes to judicial processes, creates a lot of delays. So can we have post-arbitration award only one judicial review, not like go through a chain of judicial review right up to Supreme Court? One judicial. How do we integrate the judicial process and arbitration so that timely settlement of issues happen? And on the other area, on 110 lakh crores worth of NIP and some more projects happening in the infrastructure over the next 3-4 years, the amount of BG required from the construction industry or EPC industry is going to move from 10.5 lakh crores today in the banking system to something like 30 to 35 lakh crores. Right now, do we need so much of BGs to support the amount of projects is one question, right? Can we reduce in the COVID period? We did a 3% performance guarantee was limited to 3%. I think it has worked well. Maybe we should extend it for almost all the projects for a much longer period of time. It is getting over in March. We should change that. Otherwise, the bank guarantee itself will become a constraint on moving the banking, on providing guarantees for supporting this sort of size. And the Gatishakti portal should be the single window clearance for almost everything. They should help in pre-bid conditions, actual conditions on the ground. They should play a role in planning for aggregates and quarry, borrow area, all of that. It's possible for Gatishakti to play a role. They should give inputs before the bidding itself, and it should be a single window clearance for almost all the approvals of all the stakeholders. We need to find a way to do that. And the last point I just want to make is on the termination payment. Whenever we get into termination of concession, either from the concessionaire side or the concession authority side, you need to have a system that banks, the 90% of debt due needs to be paid straight away rather than ensure the dispute gets resolved. That will ensure the banking system is adequately enthused to support infrastructure projects. And also the RBI refinancing norms of infrastructure projects needs to be fine-tuned so that viable projects are continued further. So I stop with this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Govindan. Some of these suggestions are truly revolutionary, especially your use of futures trading into the interest rate futures, which could open up the market quite significantly. I'm sure you would have made a representation to SEBI, but otherwise, I'm happy to work with you to see if we can, working with Madam to make a representation to Ministry of Finance and then to SEBI, because it does, it is quite true. And if 80-90 lakh crore trading is happening on equity futures, which is fairly on the riskier end, why not we can move towards the interest rate side? I think there are some valid points that you made with regard to how the success of the roads, the concessional frameworks, particularly inflation pass-through, pre-establishment of formula in which the tariffs would increase over the longer period, as well as the mechanism that is sitting in the TOT concession agreements, which is basically to ensure that the risk is between a certain band and beyond that the concession period extends or reduces. I think it's been well accepted by the industry on the road side, and I'm sure there's an opportunity to follow the same template in other sectors as well. Quite a few good points there, Mr. Govindan. Thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it. We also have your paper that you've submitted, so we'll be working on our recommendations based on that as we go forward.
Thank you.
Now we are bringing back, we are pivoting towards the railways, which is got the second largest allocation in the current budget at about 2.4 lakh crores. And as we heard from Honorable Prime Minister, that railways have pretty much quadrupled their capex as well as electrification of the rail track, etc. So with that, may I please request Mr. Devendra Sharma, ED Infrastructure at IRCON, to share his thoughts. Mr. Sharma, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Madam Alka Upadhyay, Mr. Others, very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to make my presentation, if you permit. Can I go ahead with the presentation?
Please,
yeah. So this. Yes. Presentation mode is not successfully working, so I continue with the other mode by verbal. Yes, so I continue like just through a speech. Indian Railway is the fourth largest railway network in the world, transported a record 1,418 million tons of cargo in the financial year 2021 to 22. Indian Railway plays a stellar role in meeting the logistic needs of the country and is rightly called lifeline of the nation. Railway is one of the key drivers of PM Gatishakti scheme. The PM Gatishakti scheme, the National Master Plan for Multimodal Connectivity, aims to decongest railway infrastructure by 51% by the year 2024-25. Ministry of Railways plans to increase its share of the logistic market to 45% from the current 27 to 28% in 2022-23. To boost infrastructure, the Ministry of Railway has received a record budgetary support of 2.4 lakh crores in 2023-24. It is the highest ever outlay and about 9 times of that provided in 2013-14. And its budgetary support is 51% increase over the last year. The budgetary key announcements are redevelopment of stations, which are 1,275 stations under Amrit Bharat stations, introduction of Vande Bharat trains. Firstly, we are introducing hydrogen fuel trains and modern wagons for freight movements, laying of additional tracks, electrification of the networks, corridor approach for development, and last and first mile connectivity to strategic corridors such as energy, ports, hilly areas, Janjatiya Gaurav, etc. Focus on tourism through Bharat Gaurav trains by introducing new circuits. The capital outlay have been divided into various sectors, and there is huge increase if we compare during last 10 years. Last year we had a total outlay budget support of 1,59,300 crores, which has been increased to 2,40,000 crores, which is more than 51% increase. Budget support and extra support resources help sustain investments. Railways capital expenditure includes investment for constructing new lines, procuring wagons, doubling of lines, and renewing tracks. In 2023-24, railway capital expenditure is targeted 2.6 lakh crores, which is an increase over 6% over the previous years. The share of capital expenditure in total expenditure of railways has consistently increased in recent years. Despite low revenue surplus, this increase has been funded through budgetary support from central government and extra budgetary resources. The major achievements during 2022-23 till date are several initiatives have been taken in the last year by Ministry of Railways to achieve the objectives of PM's Gatishakti and improve logistic efficiency as summarized. PM Gatishakti for planning. Ministry for Railways was one of the ministries to onboard very early on PM Gatishakti National Master Plan launched in October 2021 by Honorable Prime Minister to bring in transformative approach in planning and execution of infrastructure transportation projects. Ministry of Railway has set multidisciplinary Gatishakti Directorate in railway boards for single window clearance and fast-tracking sanctioning of new projects. The Directorate focuses on bringing synergies and improving the efficiency of system to create additional rail infrastructure and thereby enhance railway market share in the country's cargo loading and reduce logistic costs. The core principle of PM Gati Shakti, integrated planning, logistic efficiency, multimodal approach, and maximum coverage to economic nodes are followed in planning of the projects. Some of the Indian Railway achievements in the financial year 2022-23 are as follows. Network Planning Group has appraised and recommended 24 projects with estimated cost of 66,910 crores proposed by Ministry of Railways based on core principles of PM Gati Shakti. More than 3,000 railway projects have been mapped and 126 projects alignments have been verified and finalized on the Gati Shakti GIS platform developed by BISEC N. The Gati Shakti units have been created in all 68 divisions of Indian Railways. 3,808 kilometers commissioned up to January 2023 against 2,910 kilometers commissioned in last financial year. This is the highest ever number of kilometers commissioned in a year. The pace of commissioning projects has improved from 4 km per day to 12 km per day. Pace of commissioning of automatic signaling improved from 18 km per month to 33 km per month. The improvement in automatic signaling has paved the way for safety of the train movements. Electrified network of IR has been extended to 85%. North Central Railway, Uttarakhand states have been 100% electrified. Now I would like to talk about action plan for 2023-24. The Ministry of Railways had made significant progress under the government's PM's Gati Shakti National Master Plan aimed at improving multimodal connectivity as well as last mile connectivity across India. To meet PM's Gatishakti vision in time-bound manner, the Indian Railway endeavors are aligned towards the following areas: energize the organization for developing infrastructure in line with the demand, increasing the pace of commissioning of projects from 12 km per day to 16 km per day by next financial year, automatic signaling from 33 km per month to 65 km per month, electrification of 100% exit road BG railways is planned by 2023 to 24, rail connectivity to Kashmir Valley by 2023, rail connectivity to the capital of Mizoram by December 2023, rollout of Amrit Bharat station scheme covering more than 1,276 stations, covering the IR network spanning the entire length and breadth of country, provide connectivity to critical infrastructure gap projects, catering to mines, minerals, industry, coal port, connectivity to hilly and border areas. During 2023-24, the overall capex is likely to be spent.
Sharmaji,
yes, sir.
Sharmaji, sorry to step in here, sir. May I request if you can wrap up quickly, because we've got your points now. So if you have big points to make up, please use the time there. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. I will take 1 minute only. We are ambitiously, we as a RCON are ambitiously contributing to nation, not only as a construction agency, but also as a concessionaire. In fact, we have made equity investment of more than 1,000 crore, 1,167 crores to be exact, and we are prepared for more connectivity. We are also contributing towards a national plan for coal connectivity, which will pave way for more than 1 billion ton coal transport by 2024-25. Thank you very much, sir, for giving opportunity. Thanks a lot. I close here.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, and apologies for stepping in to ask you to hurry up. But in the interest of time, and given that we have a written submission also from you, so we'll be taking up your points there. Ladies and gentlemen, we are into the last 4 speakers now, and conscious that we are running behind schedule. So the speakers are, next speaker is Mr. Captain Gajanan Karanchikar. He's the president of All India Maritime Pilots Association, and we have not really touched upon this aspect in our discussion thus far. I'm sure he has some interesting points to share. Captain Saab, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be part of this esteemed group and also this initiative. When Mera Desh Badal Raha Hai, the very initiative that asking the industry for the enablers for the industry themselves and asking where to allocate the budgets are and how to spend this money itself is a very innovative approach, and thank you for that. I also attended a last Saturday similar program with Ministry of Shipping and Ports and Waterways. So, sir, to start with, I mean, the maritime is the biggest sector we have and which is absolutely untapped. Given the cognizance of this fact that there we have so much to develop there, and we are so underdeveloped there towards our goal of hydrogen economy. I'm sure that if we develop maritime sector, we will have a lot to cover. And initiative in enabling growth in maritime trade, international or coastal. What we have to need to look at the entire ecosystem. When we talk about ecosystem, it doesn't mean that we only look at the ports or we only look at the certain sectors. There are elements of the entire shipping, whether it's coastal or international, where we need to look at the entire development of the maritime trade. Ports are the main gateway, so our ports are very, very, very. You see the roads inside the port itself will make you feel not to travel inside the port, and that really kills our time and turnaround time, evacuation of cargo. The 4 major elements: one is the port infrastructure, evacuation of cargo, very important, the interline connectivity. That is what is part of it. And the 4th important thing is the tonnage, the ship owners. In the international trade, we have always tonnage because the people are, when we are importing the cargo and exporting cargo. How about the coastal shipping? We are lagging behind the coastal shipping initiative a lot. I mean, if you really have to, I mean, I had said this 4 years back, when we had to do the Sagarmala entire, and put the entire Sagarmala booklet into a tangible goals, and let's start measuring them every 1 month or every 6 months. That would have been a different matter altogether. Criticizing here, I'm appreciating the government for taking this, first of all, a lead of asking industry experts. And second most important thing is, The port efficiency is also very important. I had suggested this again 4-5 years back that we should have an expert committee, and which can comprise of the road ministry as well to run these ports efficiently. So what is needed for this? We have done so much of things on the coastal shipping, promoting this trade. But I'm not going to dwell on the problems because everybody knows these problems and they have been discussed in every forum in shipping today. So I have to only discuss them 8-9 times everywhere else. So I'm going to tell you a solution as to this thing, as to what we need to do, because where you can allocate this budget. First of all, the 44,000 crores which will be given for 81 projects, which is a less amount than 150, 110 lakh crore. I mean, that needs to be increased considerably to tap the maritime growth. Important thing is that, despite having the GST on butter fuel oil and cabotage elections and green channel clearances for coastal cargo and everything else, there are no takers in coastal shipping. We need to create, very importantly, that tonnage. We need to create those ship owners in India. We need to create that shipbuilding cluster in India. So 13 ministries coming together for this initiative of this session itself is very commending. And we are doing this three ministries together now. So this is very, very important. I'm going to suggest some 5-6 points. My presentation is with you. I'm ready to help further in developing those points further and breaking them into the goals and action plans and annual. I'm myself PMP professional, so I can do that project very well for the government of India. But importantly is developing maritime development fund, very important. Madam just now said about banking structure and things like that. But shipping finance is very difficult to obtain. That's one thing. Dedicated bank policy. We need to have this kind of things to have that model shift to the creation of ship owners. The railways have done this model shift to railways from road by dedicated freight corridors. Why can't we have a dedicated freight carriers? I'm not picking up this from China, but I'm picking up from Japan. They have a freight carriers which are dedicated for 10, 20, 15 years. Government incentives. I mean, incentive is one part of doing business. It doesn't last long. Subsidies can't make the businesses work. I have a firm opinion that we should have a dedicated freight carrier which can carry fertilizers for next 10 years, can carry the, whatever coastal cargo we have to be carried in the coastal cargo. Having done the coastal trade automobile for 2 years for one of my last employers, I am very well versed with this. Carbon credit monetization is very important. The end user must get a carbon credit when we have decided this, and I'm thankful to Mr. Gatri, because I remember one of his first meetings, he had said we will give 2,000 rupees back to a car buyer if his car comes by the sea transport. But that got fizzled out somewhere. So we need to do this, that whoever cargo is transported, that end user must get the green credit. I don't understand. I mean, we have the online portal now, and we have the port community system and things like that. But having said that, we need to have a total digitalization of this coastal shipping model, which will not only enable us in creating that kind of a thing, but it also will make us move towards the complete mapping of the coastal trade movement. Decarbonization, it should come naturally to people. So there's a change of mindset required. I would suggest that Sagarmala chapter should be included into the schools. So people at least learn at an early age as to what is the green transports. So we don't teach this to our children. They can never opt upon it. There's a major behavioral change. It should be a natural shift towards the green transportation. The big hurdle earlier was coordinating with the ministries. Now we have this done. So I would suggest a creation of a nodal agency for all licenses. We are doing a lot of announcement of single window and things like that. It is not happening in reality. I'm sorry to say, but to hold the ship owner's hand, hold the person's hand who puts the money on table for buying a ship, or hold the cargo owner's hand who will put his cargo at the risk of transporting by sea, whatever it is. Whatever the risk insurance risk it is, I'm sure that we need to have one single, nodal agency comprising of all ministries taking care of that cargo and cargo movement. I think with this, to conclude, I have a last slide which is not me saying, it is Napoleon Hill saying that willpower and desire, when they come together, is irresistible pair. So willpower, the government has come really forward forthwith with all those policies so far in promoting our coastal shipping. I think the desire has to come from industry now, and this is a very good initiative to bring the industry together to understand as to what the hurdles and what government is doing. aridly the government. I mean, very heartening to see a man, leading from the front. Mr. Modi today spoke about infrastructure and things like that. Was absolutely great. So he is himself is leading into the maritime now. I'm sure maritime industry is going to have a very bright future ahead for the maritime people. I thank you very much for this opportunity and complete my submission here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Captain Gajanan. I think coastal shipping is one of those untapped potentials that we have as a country. And I'm sure your suggestion, especially the one that you made around dedicated freight coastal corridor, I think would resonate for us to take this idea forward, apart from the other suggestions that you made. Now we pivot towards the aviation sector. We've not really touched upon that sector at all thus far. It is one of the largest as far as the infrastructure is concerned. It is also a very aspirational sector because as the country grows and the people prosper, there is more and more proclivity for them to use aviation, to not to understand the role that it plays on the cargo side. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Narayan Rao, who has been a pioneer in the aviation sector along in the GMR group. Narayan Rao Garu, over to you, please, sir.
Very good afternoon, Madam Secretary Moore and other senior government officers and other dignitaries who are participating in this. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity. I would like to touch upon the aviation sector. Just before that, I would like to give just a brief overview of what is the aviation sector. India is a shining star in the global economy, as well as even aviation also is the most promising growth-oriented market, already occupied third position, and it gives immense opportunities for the economy. Aviation sector helps a lot as far as the promotion of tour, trade, and commerce. This aviation sector during the COVID time played very important role in the mobilization of vaccination, entire cargo system, medical equipment, all these things. It played, including evacuation, all these things. And if the economy growth is 7%, the aviation sector growth is going to be 1.5 times. A double-digit growth. That is the kind of opportunities we have. If you look at the future outlook, what has happened, what is going to happen in terms of airports, is from a level of 74 airports in the last 8 years, it doubled 150 airports. From now onwards, it is going to be 220 airports. In terms of aircraft fleet size, it was about 150. Today, it has already touched a population of 700 aircraft. It is going to be added another 1,000 aircraft in the next few years. India is going to cross for the first time over 2,000 fleet flights. And in terms of airport growth, if you see that all 4 airports, metro airports privatized, brought about 1 lakh crores of investment in the last 15 years. And in the future also, for the first time, India is seeing a second airport is started in Goa, second airport, same city. In the same way, in Delhi and Mumbai also, second airports are going to, that is going to be a reality. We are going to see second airports in the same cities, and in Chennai also, all these things. And now government has identified another 25 airports of A airports to privatize. It's a great opportunity. And in the future, government identified 1 lakh crores of investment from airports and about $150 billion of airlines of new aircraft. Good news is now Air India has come to Tata stands. It's a great thing, and they're able to expand the market. And another new LCC, Akash Airlines, is added. All these things really gives a great opportunities for the aviation sector to support the economy, tourism, trade, and commerce. Other important aspects are from the aviation sector. Aviation is one sector in terms of economic multiplier. Every dollar invested is giving a results of $3.25. Economic multiplier, every one job gives 6 jobs. That is kind of thing. And even in the cargo side also, today India is about 3.5 million, but government wanted to reach a level of 10 million tons of cargo. It create opportunity. Apart from the most important is lot of improvement in the technology, digital yatra, faceless and human interventionless opportunities are there in the civil aviation. So it gives immense opportunities to the aviation sector that helps country in a big way. Now coming to specific aspect of budget announcement, what are things are covered for the aviation side? One is that 50 additional airports, helipads, water resources, water aerodromes, landing facilities. These are all directly identified in the next year budget, then all these things are going to be regional connectivity. Tier 2, Tier 3 cities are going to be covered. The second aspect in budget is about 1,244 crores as allocated, especially the regional connectivity scheme, mainly for the purpose of revival of 22 airports and the recommencement about 100 RCS routes, especially Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, and also to develop the Northeast connectivity. That is also most important. Another initiative, especially to develop the North India, a separate scheme is formulated for the development of air connectivity and airport infrastructure in the Northeast. Apart from this direct announcement in the budget, what is most important, all this kind of investment, 10 lakh crores for infrastructure and FDI and all those things, gives huge opportunities for the aviation growth to the country. So that is a indirect benefit of the budget, all those things. But what is the usefulness of this budget announcement? Especially, it helps to a common man also to travel by air, which was a thing of past. But today, even 100 people also, Prime Minister dream of Hawaii Chapalwala also can be used Hawaii gas, it can fly. And apart from that, it brings the connectivity within the country, small cities, Tier 2, Tier cities, helping the passenger movement as well as cargo movement. What is important to make it forward? It requires involvement of state government and fast decisions so that all these things will take place. That is all about budget. But another important is second sector, which I am going to tell, how to create a hub in India. Today, we are seeing the aviation hubs in Dubai, Singapore, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Turkey. But the time has come. Within India, we have to create a hub. The great opportunities provides within India. For creating a hub, what is important is three wings has to work. One is airlines. They have to come forward with a strong transfer product and fleet expansion, especially wide body for a direct haul to cater the markets of USA, Europe, and all those things. And development of network. They should have a code sharing with other lines. So these are the initiatives required from the airline side. Then next is airports. Airports also need to develop the infrastructure, suiting the transfer facilities and faster entertainment connections. The government side is what is required is liberal bilaterals in giving to all the airlines and liberal visa policy and joint promotion of tourism. All these things will help the hub facility in a big way. And apart from even customs clearance, also lot of changes are there, especially in the cargo area. The huge opportunity for transfer and transit cargo opportunities. This is all about development of hub in India. The important case is the great structure is infrastructure investment. How to attract investment in the aviation sector? A few slices. What is that? Important things are to encourage investment is timely resolution of disputes is required because it's a new privatized new thing and lot of complexities arising from the tariff determination. Lot of disputes will come. So whenever there is a dispute appeal, they should be resolved. Act says 90 days, but it is taking a lot of time. Therefore, timely resolution of disputes is important. Second area is the industry being aviation being infrastructure nature, it requires long-term financing at an affordable cost. So for that, the decision is India needs to develop matured bond market with the involvement of provident funds and pension funds, LIC, sovereign funds, all these things. So because aviation cannot afford to take bank finance and serve the interest and repayment on monthly basis, it requires long-term financing. Another area is liberalize land use policy. Especially today, in the case of a greenfield airport awarded by state government, there is no land use restriction you can use for anything within the airport. But in the case of a brownfield airports, airports, there is a land use restriction. Government has come out with a national sewage policy in 2016 with this liberalization, but it is yet to take place. Even in 2017 budget statement also says, but it is 6 years, 7 years. The time has come, time is essence. Government has to act fast, bring necessary legislation changes in the AA Act to remove the land use restrictions in AA airports. That brings huge valuation to AA airports and it helps the government also. Then the next area is rationalization of taxation, especially the ATF is a costly item that should be brought under GST. If not all the petrol products, at least VAT should be brought under the GST regime that helps the airlines to grow fast and reduce their cost because if it's on GST, they'll get input tax on the GST. And another area is government should avoid at minimum the retrospective change of law that gives a not certainty to the investors, so that should be avoided. And next area is lot of focus needs to be given skill development. in the areas of air traffic controllers, DGCA inspectors, especially safety of the airports that requires pilots, baggage cleaners, and immigration officers. These are the 5 areas which it requires a lot of focus to develop. And another area is where arbitration are awarded, government automatically today is going for the appeal, whether there is a worth, there is a case, there is a strength, simply better to be accepted, go for appeal. That should be stopped and realistic assessment should be done. If 3 are arbitrated judges is given, one has to apply mind, if really what is it, they should go for appeal, otherwise they should think seriously. And
sorry to step in here, sir. We are running really behind schedule, and we got your written submissions. Could you just wrap up by your recommendations?
The last area, sir, was it requires to be development of a city-side development in the airports, like aerotropolis in the other countries. That brings lot of whatever money generated from the city-side development should be used for the airport development so that it reduces the airport charges. So all these initiatives will attract investment in the aviation sector. With this, I stop, and I'll be happy to give any clarification.
I think one of the things that clearly resonates in all of us sitting here in this room is that if we can have our flagship carrier flying out from our flagship airports, there would be better sense of pride that we would have, given that we have such a large country and the fastest growing in the region. So your points well taken. In the interest of time, I'll not do a summary of your points, but move on to a very, very interesting part of the infrastructure, which only recently has now started to be treated as an infrastructure asset class, which is around the digital infrastructure. And we have 2 speakers who are going to share their thoughts with us. We have Mr. or Colonel Vikram Tewatia, representing Cellular Operators Association, and then we'll have Mr. Jitendra Bisht, SVP Sterlite Power, but with this emphasis on OFC. So, Mr. Tewatia, please.
Trust I'm audible, so thank you very much for this opportunity. And when I see the list of speakers up ahead, all of them emphasized the importance of digitization. So the topic of today's discussion is reducing the cost of logistics by using the Gatishakti National Model Plan. So I'll try and focus on that. How to reduce the cost of logistics, right? But to begin with, the COVID time lockdown really emphasized the huge importance of broadband connectivity. And just as an example, for a country like India, broadband connectivity actually enabled you to change the taxation system. You had every state had a taxation system, but the government was able to implement GST, the courtesy broadband. So the power of that, and in the 4G era, if you saw, the combination of the JAM Trinity enabled people to develop apps and change the way you look at transportation. It gave, and accommodation gave rise to, the shared economy, and let's say Uber and Ola happened, and so what I'm trying to emphasize upon is, one is the real significant importance of digitization across verticals. So there are many vertical sectors is called, and I notice with tremendous appreciation a lot of state government officials on today's call. So I would really emphasize that within, in the state governments, you don't have a telecom department. So it's looked after by the IT department. But what is important is to monitor the digitization, for example, of the transportation sector, the fisheries, the agriculture and all. Because what 5G networks will help you do is to move the data around. But the juice of the data is in writing the algorithm. So once you have the data, which is available to be shared, there would be smart startups and smart people who will, extract the juice out of that data. So that is a very important facet. And I would segue that into, there's a proposal in the digital, National Digital Policy for coming out with a state digital readiness index. Earlier it was a broadband readiness index, but we would, particularly the DOT in this case, for an early announcement can be done on an annual basis, Because when you do investment summits in states, then the investors would look at what kind of digital infrastructure that a state has made. And there is data available both on Gatishakti as well as on a portal called Tarang Sanchar run by the DOT, where you can see the telecom towers and the radio base stations down to every district level. So, the district commissioner or the state broadband committee can actually monitor the progress of the build-up of the digital infrastructure. The next point I would like to highlight is that while there is a great amount of very good work which has been done on the wireless side, where, in the last 6 months where we were at 18 Mbps average throughput, it has jumped up with the recent spectrum network upgrades to 30 Mbps per mobile broadband smartphone, right? However, it is very important to acknowledge areas where we are way behind and where today's conference is dwelling to bring energy to work in a synchronous, coordinated manner to develop digital highways. Now, as I draw the analogy to a normal routine road highway. So that road highway has a lot of capacity. So we need to build that optical fiber capacity along all the road. I notice the Indian road network, maybe there's a lot of emphasis in the national high NHAI, which has set up a special project vehicle for common ducts. But a majority of the roads are state highways and district roads. And in that area, I would like to draw the attention on the MORTH and how it can facilitate the building up of common ducts other than National Highway Authority of India, because the highways have to be fed by the district and the rural roads. And unless there is optical fiber laid down there as well, we would not be doing the catch up, which we intend to do by, which really requires attention of multiple, whether it's at the district level or the Ministry of Highways and so this is one point I wanted to highlight. The other is some states have, understood the importance of this whole fiber connectivity, like Telangana, I know, and maybe Kerala as well. They've set up SPVs and they're able to draw funding from the USO fund. But there are many states who are not, they are banking on the BBNL or Bharat Broadband Network to build out the optical fiber. So, the best practices by some states can get highlighted for other states to possibly, emulate. But it's very important to earmark budgets within state budgets for laying out fiber, right? Because on the air side, we are good, but on the land side, unless we build up significant fiber assets on the ground and we attract investments into doing that, I think that's an area where we'll not be able to draw the benefits of 5G. The next what I'd highlight is this whole right of way. I noticed my colleague from the power sector, NTPC, highlighted, because the ownership of land is by various government authorities. So while the Department of Telecom has come out with a right of way gazetted rules, but the adoption of states, while states may adopt it, but the implementation on ground still, despite the fact that a lot of effort has gone into applications being submitted on the Gatishakti portal or right-of-way portal, but there is, the essence is in actual outcome. So you can monitor the outcome on Tarang Sanchar as to how many towers actually got installed in a month, in which state. So if you can measure something, then you can deliver the target. So I would exhort that there are measurable targets which are monitored by the state broadband committees, which should have participation from the power sector, from the road sector, so that it is a coordinated effort as is envisaged under the national NMP plan. The other thing which is very important is where we've been laying stress, KRA has done a pilot, is in street furniture. So what is going to happen is that there are, when you roll out 5G, a lot of the radio has to be near the device, right? So what you see, the towers on top of buildings have to come down and merge into the street to be near, and the other is to move inside buildings. So there are two areas that we need assistance in, and there are recommendations of the TRAI, is the GIS mapping of all street furniture assets. So for those who want more details, I won't dwell here, but they are there in the recommendations in the pilot report, which we did for in Kandla Port, Namma Metro, GMR Airport in Delhi, as well as Bhopal Smart City. It gave us some very good learning recommendations should be adopted by different entities of the government, which the TRAI has recommended. As a country, you have an asset available, you need to unlock its potential. So you have a lot of street assets, and if they are not, their potential is not unlocked. For example, Japan in one go allowed the installation of 5G radios on all traffic lights across Japan.
Yeah.
So as an example,
request if you can just share your recommendations in a brief manner, please, because it will allow other speakers to share their thoughts as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Last, just 3 points I'd emphasize. One is the availability of power at industrial tariffs. Telecom sector is a gross consumer of a lot of power, but we are not able to draw the benefits of getting renewable energy power due to policy constraints, because we are tower by tower and not an aggregate user. So, our request to the Power Ministry and the electricity regulators is for enabling renewable energy power to be available to the telecom sector. Last, point I would say is that it doesn't, come up, but we are generating a lot of digital trash. All this data that you generate, it gets stored in data centers, right? You can call it cloud, but essentially data centers where you have to spend energy. There has to be a policy in getting rid of digital trash which you do not need. Otherwise, you're spending energy in just retaining, trash which you may not need. And my last point is, a lot of great energy has been put in today's discussion. We really need to put down the points with a definite action plan and a targeted outcome, so that whatever points that we've discussed today, they get monitored for actual execution on the ground. With that, thank you very much to Mort and to all my colleagues who joined up this call. We at COI particularly appreciate the efforts of the Department of Telecom and the other government ministries.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Some interesting points there, especially the points that you made with regard to how we can prepare ourselves for launch of 5G through policy intervention, as well as the digital trash that we are creating. Because just like we have the recycling policy coming up on the automobile side, maybe there is a need for us to consider digital recycling as well. Thank you for your thoughts. And last but not the least, may I request Mr. Jitendra Bish to share his thoughts on digital infrastructure, please. Jiten?
Thank you. Sir, I took the liberty to project my screen. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Secretary and other officials of the ministry. Today, I'm going to touch upon two critical themes under coordinated planning and development of including digital highways. Number one is unlocking the untapped potential of transmission infrastructure for expansion of telecommunication sector. Number two is physical and financial coordination for infrastructure development. Very heartening to see the meetings of the mind by virtue of this workshop today. And I'll buttress my point by just two slides with two suggestions. Is my screen visible, sir?
It's visible.
Okay. Okay. Number one, today, this is the architecture that I want to present to the forum here. This is the network of the country today, which is spanning around 6 lakh kilometers of transmission line. These are circuit kilometers. Out of 6 lakhs, we have 1 lakh kilometers, 1.5 lakh kilometers already fiberized on this network. The benefit of this fiberized network is it's 99% uptime. It's a very quick rollout, extremely low maintenance. This can be used by the transmission companies, telcos, ISOs, TSPs, and for the e-governance. We have the opportunity of fiberizing further 2 lakh kilometers of transmission line, and these are 24 fiber counts on each line, minimum, so to say. The suggestion that I want to make is today we have a very successful model in some of the states where the private sector and the STUs have come together and monetized this asset for the use of telecommunication as well as e-governance. So the suggestion that I want to make is to mandate all state utilities to augment their fiber network and ultimately monetize through a standard PPP model. There are various models available today. And truth be told, most of these STUs are funded by the central grant, where 50% of the grant is given to the project, which is used for reliable communication infrastructure development in the country today. So this is my first suggestion. I have also made a presentation. I have submitted the presentation. I'll be happy to make a detailed representation if need be. Number two, I'm talking about the physical and financial coordination of infrastructure in regards to transmission. On the right, if you see, this is the illustrative list or indicative list of transmission approvals that are needed to build infrastructure. These are typically 40 approvals needed in the country today for laying a transmission line, which are typically more than 200 kilometers long. These typically would require 18 to 20 months of approval cycle. And to everybody's surprise, this is the time we've been allocated to make the infrastructure along with the approvals. Since India is going through a super cycle of investment in infrastructure, where roads, highways, pipeline, airports, and all other infrastructure being laid, there's a need for a coordinated effort. Transmission is critical for energy transmission. We have to lay around 50,000 circuit kilometers by 2030 to meet the energy goals, energy transition. And rapid rollout will hinge upon accurate planning based on accurate data. Today, what we need, Madam Secretary, is all existing and planned infrastructure project should be on one single platform, layered and digitized, including the land records, revenue records, and also request to extend this portal for private sector developers pre-bidding. It'll fetch us 3 benefits, the sector. Number 1, rationalization of clearances. Number 2, speedy approvals. And number 3, the in-time development infrastructure, which is 18 to 24 months, including the approvals and clearances. So these are 2 points that I wanted to make on this forum, ma'am. Thank you.
I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your valuable thoughts. With that, we bring to close the discussions and the submissions from our esteemed speakers. Just to wrap up the session, we started with multimodal, and to complete a full journey of infrastructure across asset classes, across various dimensions of financing, development, risk, etc., has been possible because all of you shared your valuable thoughts on this. We noticed that Mr. Gulabchand has also been very keenly and intently listening to all the points that are being made. With the permission of Madam Secretary, Mr. Gulabchand, would you be willing to share some thoughts based on what you've heard, as well as your thoughts, please, sir? Mr. Gulabchand, we are just making arrangements to unmute you. Just hold on, please. Just bear with us for a minute.
अजीत गुलाबचंद।
ठीक है सर, मैं कर रहा हूँ। अनम्यूट कर दीजिए ताकि जो सुरेश जी बोल रहे हैं वो
अनम्यूट कौन कर रहा है?
NIC मास्टर।
तो उनको बता दिए क्या? बता।
So Gulabchand, give us a minute.
Yes.
And now you're unmuted, sir. You can share your thoughts.
You can hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for inviting me to make the comment here. I've been very excited this morning with such a cross-infrastructure discussion, which has included private sector and all other kinds of experts to come up with some new ideas of how we can build capacity to build the infrastructure we want and bring in new ways of doing it. So it has been a wonderful morning to hear different speakers come up with. We know that all this is not always possible, but we are talking about it, so we will get the best of this going quickly. The important feature, as I see, I've been working with infrastructure for a long, long time, that many points have been made. To repeat them does not make sense, but I'll just make two important points, which do come in the way of implementing things. One point is, take for example in roads, you have a total project cost, which the public agency creates, and it is far less than the cost at which the concession is awarded. And the difference is demanded by the lenders as something that the sponsor will guarantee you to pay should that happen. Now this puts a lot of debt, or a lot of it curtails the sponsor's ability to raise money for other things. That is one of the reasons why we need to look at, and I'm saying this just to make this point, why aren't there foreign companies coming into this area? It's such a big opportunity. One of the world's biggest programs ever happened in the last 50 years. And yet, substantially, all those who were so hungry for work went to Europe, went to Southeast Asia, went to Middle East, but they haven't come here. They come as consultants, yes, but never to invest, because the gap between the total project report of price and what the lenders sign off on, this gap has to be guaranteed by the sponsor, and which they cannot do so because it encumbers their sponsor's balance sheet. Number two important thing in this whole thing is that we must bring in the concept of project finance, in the sense that the recourse on these kind of projects must be only to the project. And it can't go beyond that. Because if you go beyond that, then why are we creating these special purpose vehicles? The reason we create them is we want it independently financed, and it must be that project. So I think this is not adequately talked about, but it's an important impediment for people to look at the investment possibility here. If you remove that, you will. Second thing is that in most countries, you will find that all three are signatories. The public agency that owns the project, the concessionaire, and the lenders all sign off on the same project and the same price. And when we then come to the reality of a cost overrun somewhere, they all sit together and decide who will bring what, and that gets resolved. So I think this is an important change in our philosophy of putting the entire risk onto the concessionaire. Then he gets squeezed between the owner demanding things and the lender saying, we cannot do anything more than lend, whereas they are part of the public process here. So this is one important thing. The next important thing that I felt that I should bring about, which I see as the ones that are impediments to doing things, because removing these small things might also go a long way. We find that it has been repeated, and I'm sorry to repeat it again, but dispute resolution is an important part of this. After all, any kind of infrastructure construction activity is not made inside structured factories in controlled circumstances. You are dealing with nature, you're dealing with several other things. So there's not a project in the world that usually does not go through a cost overrun. And these are not small percentages of 1 or 2%. So when you don't resolve the dispute of what money cost overrun has taken place, you're casting the burden on the concessionaire, who can either go bankrupt because by the time he gets the money, he has to still pay his bankers for what he's doing. So I recommend that we must have some sort of a way of resolving the disputes first. I know the difficulties involved, I know the pressures involved, but it is the elephant in the room that until that is resolved, you're still going to get problems with this. This is not with a view to criticize the way things are happening, but with a view to recommend suggestions by which we can improve. And these two impediments removed, you will get a huge amount of boost to build, operate, and transfer, BOT projects. That's why BOT projects did not attract. So the issue here is, and do ask ourselves the question, why big foreign companies are not coming to participate in this huge program? Thank you. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Gulabchand. That was your years of experience in the infrastructure sector distilled into short couple of minutes of your points. All points well taken, especially around dispute resolution, which across the sectors is perhaps a common theme that has evolved out of all the speakers who have shared their thoughts here. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to bring this session to a close. We do have some time to take some questions. Just in order to ensure that since there are a large number of participants, we will be requesting you to post your questions on the chat box, and we will try to answer them from here. Questions, suggestions, recommendations, we continue to monitor the chat box. Please let them come in. Chat box.
Well, anyone who wants to come in with a quick question, I would request you to just raise your hand virtually so that we can then sequence you accordingly. Okay, happy to see one of our officers from NHIDCL raise his hands. So I'll request Mr. Pankaj Singh to make it very brief, and I would encourage people who are normally not with us, the private stakeholders, to also come in if they want to.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I
Yes,
audible?
please. Yes. Totally audible, please be quick.
मैम ये हमारा मैनुअल जो है 4-lane manual which we have IRC 84/2019 that says that the utility services and OFC cables to be carried out on all these structures at the design stage itself, whereas it does not allow us to lay the water pipeline and gas pipeline on the bridges. Now in the northeast, a lot of development is happening for laying of the water pipeline and gas pipeline. I would request that some sort of decision is required to be taken so that we can give the permission and we can keep it in the design stage itself.
Thank you. Valid point. We need to short circuit this pending issue.
Thank you.
So there was, is there someone else who wants to come in?
Someone else also had raised hand. Someone had.
Anyone? Okay. Ashish Asati, probably. Ashish, you've raised your hand.
Arun Nagpur, sir. There's also a question on the chat box from Mr.
And the question
So,
is,
okay, so I'll just answer this last question that I'm seeing. When will the NHML 100% owned SPV commence work? So I'd just like to tell you that we've already identified 20,000 kilometers of work to be taken up, and we have tendered for about 2,000 kilometers already. So that's in tender stage. Also to tell you that we've been having a dialogue with TRI as well as DOT on the mechanisms for allocation. So all that is work in progress, and very soon we will see this fructify. Okay, since I am not with land, so somebody has, our own Mr. B.M. Rao has put up a question, land acquisition through partnership with landowners. So I think that's also one of the things that is being talked about that, especially in areas where land is very costly, can we give some benefit to the landowners in terms of increased FSAI, etc., so that they are willing partners in development of road networks? So since we have to get back at 3 o'clock for the plenary, I would also, we have Mr. Khandelwal from the railways and who has not spoken at all. So could we request Mr. Khandelwal? Okay, so maybe there's some issue. Railway board hai, just try and unmute that. Another question that has come is construction sector from unorganized to organized. I think we will definitely need to make it organized, and lot of efforts have been made to in this direction. But I guess to understand what it really means to make it organized, we might just like to have more suggestions from you. And because NHBF is a body we keep
Hello.
keep meeting, we can take this forward. So, Mr. Khandelwal from Railway Board.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm
Yes,
audible?
good afternoon. Totally audible.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So, as we all know, Indian Railway is going for transformation for improving passenger experience by way of station development and Vande Bharat, and on network expansion program to take our infrastructure as per demand. We have adequate lot of works and budget grant for this current year, about 2.4 lakh crore. Out of that, 1.2 lakh crore is for fixed infrastructure for network expansion. And we are going this year for corridor approach. We have identified large number of infrastructure gap in energy corridor, about 126 and 1.25 lakh crore. We will be spending on those, making up those gaps, infrastructure gaps on energy corridor. Then we have some port connectivity works. We have identified about 24 gaps on which we will be working, and works are already in advanced stage of in progress of sanction and execution. Similarly, we are going on social sector also for Janjatiya Gaurav corridor and some cities and towns with more than 50,000 population and not connected so far. Those connectivity works also we are taking up. We on all those directions we are progressing, and Vande Bharat, about 400 rakes we will be introducing the next coming time, this year itself. 1275 station development work are in different stages, and we want to improve those stations and covering entire India, so to improve the experience of passengers. So I will request the industry to participate in our infrastructure development program, and we will go ahead with them and take up these works. We have single window clearance at railway board level. All the 8 departments are now combined under Gatishakti, and we are working from one table, and clearance of projects and all decisions are taken at one point in the railway board to reduce the time. This has helped us to improve our sanctioning, reduce the sanctioning time as well as delivery of projects, madam. So I will request industry partners to come and join with us for taking this infrastructure development program in the current year further ahead. Thank you, madam. Anybody has any question related to railways? I am ready to answer.
Yeah, so please leave your questions on the chat board now. And there are questions on, from judicial system for handling disputes. So very quickly, now to recap, you see between railways, civil aviation, DOT, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, we have a lot of CapEx expenditure to be done this year. and this has to be done. So this is, you know, the overlying, I would say, thread in all of this discussion. In order to expedite our projects, we need to expedite all the processes very quickly, arrange for funds, arrange for research, various clearances, and from partners like you from the industry, we also need to have a good amount of cooperation to take up these projects. Now, every one of us, each one of us is working and thinking in the same direction, at least thinking in the same direction. There are policy issues which keep coming up from industries, associations, and from individuals, and each time we have been trying to have a system or a proactive role wherein we can make these policy changes. And one thing which comes out very, very clearly today is that we all need to work very closely, having a single platform like the PM Gatishakti national portal, which has been developed, which will help us in quickly expediting planning, getting clearance, and also repository of all kinds of information as far as the infrastructure is concerned. My colleague, Mr. Goyal, who was just mentioning over here, he was just telling me that if all this is going to happen, if cargo movement happens, if freight movement through railways happens, then roads will be the category where probably investment will shrink or the cost of operation will sink. Well, that's a very healthy thing to say. And I would just mention that we are looking at modal shift from the current to 2047, that is the Amrit Kal, where we are looking at more of waterways being used. We are looking at more of coastal shipping, as was talked about, for movement of cargo, something that Mr. Gurdeep Singh said, how they are planning to move the coal, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of things happening. Again, one of the, I think, themes which emerged today was on green economy, green financing, and also how we can really position India in the international market to set various benchmarks as to what greening really means. So that is an opportunity in front of us. And of course, the circular economy is also very, very important because we are getting burdened by municipal waste, by digital waste, from construction waste, so on and so forth. So we will have to take care of all of these aspects as well in the circular economy approach that we are trying to adopt. And we are talking about it very, very proactively now. And lastly, my point here is that for quicker implementation of projects, as I was hearing one of the speakers said, that we need to be ahead of times as far as adoption of technology is concerned. In fact, I think most of the innovations are first brought in by the private sector, and then when the government sees it, they also bring in their policy shift. And sometimes it's the other way around. We would definitely want to take this up in a very good fashion, and we would like to have a very sound, policy for it. I'm also seeing a question that repair in the case of damage, etc., by NHI. Well, all of these issues are in a way captured in our RFP. But if yes, one important thing that comes to my mind is that once we start using optimized alignments through the PM Gatishakti portal, all these issues will also be answered. So we will very quickly make a presentation or a sum up of what were the recommendations and how do we want to implement it. Another thing which came up in as part of the asset monetization part of the taxation issue is something that we are seized of. We will also bring this up in our presentation today and hope to resolve some of the issues that have been flagged. So thank you very much. And hope to see you all at 3 o'clock. We will be reconvening at 3 using the same link, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.